Hi collective, welcome back to my channel. I am the Nosy Witch and this is my channel, Nosy Witch Tarot. Just a heads up, my readings do tend to be pretty long, they tend to be deep dives, so feel free to grab a hot or cold beverage of choice, get settled, get cozy, because we have a lot to get through today. Today's reading is going to be titled something like The Truth, Why You Are So Lovable and Way More Amazing Than You Think. Your insecurities need a reality check. So in this reading, I am doing what I love the most. I'm going to be hyping you up and giving you a very necessary reality check at the same time. Because honestly, some of you are far too humble for your own good. You are actually way more amazing than you give yourself credit for. You guys are icons, you are stars, you deserve the world, quite honestly. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. Think of this reading as your internal words of affirmation for those days where you just can't quite get there yourself. So yes, I am your internal hype man today. If your hype man happened to be a really annoying British girl who goes on too many tangents on the internet, you know how it is. But today we are scooping up all those insecurities and launching them directly into space. Where are they now? No clue. Do we care? Absolutely not. They are no longer getting a free ride on our rocket ship. Think of your insecurities as that dusty, freeloading partner who just sleeps on the couch all day, contributes absolutely nothing, and then still has the nerve to complain that you are not doing enough. Yeah, we are booting them out. We are kicking them to the curb. We're saying, go and find your new forever home and go and urinate on somebody else's carpet because it's not going to be with me in my house. I have bleached my carpet too many times, okay? That's what we're saying. So how this reading is going to work today, part one, we're going to be identifying the insecurity or the wound or the shadow, if you want to call it that. So this might be something you're dealing with right now or something a past version of you struggled with. Remember that everyone is on a different timeline, so even if it sounds like something that happened years ago, you might still recognize a part of yourself in it. That is the point. And I will be giving examples and storylines throughout this, not to box you in, but just to add clarity and context. The examples are just possibilities, not the only truth. It's more about the feelings, so if the feelings there resonate, the pile is for you. But if you are sitting there thinking, you know, this doesn't sound like me at all, it doesn't sound like me now, it doesn't sound like me as a teenager, a child, or even a toddler, that is maybe your sign to choose a different pile. Now the next part of the reading, that's going to be the fun bit. That is going to be the hype you up section. That's where we collectively tell your insecurities to sit down, shut up and stop lying to you. That will be your reality check, the truth of who you are, what makes you lovable, how the universe sees you, and why you deserve to see yourself with the same admiration. Think of this section as your ride or die bestie. It's that bestie who says, you know, absolutely not, do not text that dusty, unhouse trained ex back. We are not going back there, let me tell you why. So whenever your insecurities slink back in like a stray cat begging to crash on your couch, you can return to this reading to remember the truth. So hopefully by the end of this reading, we're going to be saying, insecurities? I don't know her. And I, as your reader, think of me as Joe Goldberg staring at you from afar and whispering to myself, the collective has insecurities. That's okay. I can fix those. I can fix you. They will be banished, rebuked, and evicted. And in their place, there is going to be confidence, self-love, knowing you're that girl or that guy or that non-binary icon. So what we are going to be covering today, at a glance, here is the reading breakdown. Just to go over this briefly, we're going to be identifying an insecurity, wound, a shadow, a way you doubt yourself, whether it's current or from a past version of you. We are going to be understanding where this may have come from. We're going to be giving examples, storylines, context, and why this might show up in the way it does. Then we're going to be going into a big, warm, slightly chaotic hype you up session where we explore your strengths, your gifts, and why you are so darn lovable. We're going to be giving you that full reality check on why your insecurities are just not the truth. And we're going to be looking at how you can transmute those insecurities into empowerment. We're looking at how spirit sees you versus how you see yourself. There might be details, confirmations, and examples sprinkled throughout to just bring everything to life and tie the reading together. This is basically just one big confidence reset designed to remind you who you are. Hopefully this will give you a moment of grounding and provide some emotional support for anyone struggling, especially during the holiday season. You know, sometimes these feelings can come up more than usual during times where we are kind of reminded of our past. So basically part 1 is the shadow and part 2 is the hype. So who is this reading for? Anyone and everyone who has ever felt insecure. So if you have never ever in your life felt insecure about anything, maybe this one isn't for you, and maybe you should be up here teaching the rest of us. But this one is for anyone who has ever felt othered, underestimated, criticized, bullied, hurt, or made to feel small. Anyone who needs a reminder that they are powerful, worthy, and genuinely amazing. So whether you're in a bit of a slump right now, having a lot of self-doubt, or whether most of the time you are 99% confident, but you are here to defeat your 1% final boss of insecurity, or even if you are hardly ever insecure anymore, if this isn't you now, but it was you once, there is probably something here for you. So as for the disclaimers, obviously we are going to be touching on insecurities, sensitive topics. Some of the topics we may discuss could be triggering, so please use your own discernment. If you would prefer to skip the shadow section and head straight to the hype section, you can do, or you can skip the reading entirely if needed. Your well-being always comes first. My intention is always to uplift and empower. This is a collective reading and not everything will resonate. Please take what's for you and leave the rest for somebody else. This is a free reading on the internet and you are not being held hostage here. Aside from that, I just want to say how grateful I am that you are here today. Around the time I'm filming this, I believe it's just been Thanksgiving. We don't really celebrate Thanksgiving in the UK, but happy holidays to all those who do or who did. I know some of my audience is from the US, and quite honestly, what I am truly thankful for is you guys. Not to get all soppy, but a couple of years ago, I could have never ever in a million years envisioned myself doing something like this. But this beautiful, supportive, loving community that we have built, even though it's small, it has completely changed my life. The way you guys just support me and the way you guys support each other just says everything about your character, and I feel so fortunate to have built a community like that. I just never ever want it to seem like I'm taking that for granted. Like when I did finally get the courage to start a YouTube channel, I had already beaten myself up 1,000 times, telling myself I'm not good enough, and I was prepared for the negative comments. I genuinely expected other people to confirm that. I was very much prepared for negativity. I'd already made peace with that part because I was very well aware how unhinged the internet can be, and when I did get those bad comments, it did not surprise me at all. And honestly, one of the main reasons I could cope with the negativity is because I have dealt with my own insecurities to the point where like nobody's comment can ever hurt me the way that I have hurt me, the way that my brain has hurt myself. Like no stranger online could ever cut deeper than the things that my own brain has said to me. You know, the way my own insecurities have manifested and kind of held me hostage throughout the years. So trust me when I say this, this reading is as much for me as it is for you. You know, I'm healing right alongside you. I'm not immune to needing a reality check either. But what I wasn't prepared for, what actually surprised me, was the love. I wasn't prepared for the kindness. I wasn't prepared for people actually listening to me and wanting to do that. I wasn't prepared for people liking these readings or caring about them or showing up or commenting or choosing to spend their time here. I wasn't prepared for the softness, for the encouragement, for the warmth that you guys would all offer without hesitation. And the way that even one tiny little comment, somebody just saying like, oh, this resonated for me, changed my whole reality. I wasn't prepared for that either, because it genuinely reminded me that there is so much good in the world, and you guys show that to me constantly, even just by making me smile on the internet. You truly do make a difference, and I hope that I can keep making a difference to you so that you can keep making a difference to yourself and to the lives of others around you. It makes little me, you know, the outsider who never thought she'd find her people, feel like she finally did. And the fact that your love has shaped who I am and how confidently I show up here now is something I will never ever take for granted. I just want you guys to know that, you know, not to be all weird and parasocial, but I truly do have so much love for you guys in the capacity of a faraway internet bestie. and I couldn't be more grateful for the energy you bring. You have become my small little village, and I'm so grateful to be part of yours too. You know, we're coming up to 2 years on this channel, so if you're new and you haven't heard me ramble before, welcome to the Nosy Witch Coven. You know, and this time of year, I just want to say, of course, the holidays can be lovely, grounding, nostalgic, but they can also be kind of triggering depending on your roots, your experiences, your wounds. So please take this reading as your grounding reality check, you know, a reminder that what your anxious brain tells you isn't the full truth. Spirit wants you to see the whole truth, and that's that you are amazing, you are beautiful, and you are so loved. You are loved beyond measure. With that little ramble out of the way, let's introduce the piles today. So over here we have pile 1 with the Witchy Magic Tarot and the Snake sticker. Here we have pile 2 with the Wandering Moon Tarot and the Feather sticker. Here we have pile 3 with the Dog Tarot and the Sun/Moon sticker. Here we have pile 4 with the Midnight City Tarot and the Pyjamas sticker. And here we have pile 5 with the Good Karma Tarot and the Bottle sticker. Once you've chosen your pile, please head to the description box or the pinned comment below for timestamps. They will take you to the start of your chosen reading. Readings are timeless, just to let you know. You are welcome to choose more than one pile if you have multiple insecurities to banish today. If you prefer to skip the insecurity portion, like I said, you can do if you want to go straight to the hype you up, but the full flow will make more sense if you listen to both, because we will probably refer back to part 1 during the hype you up portion. Unpleasant energy and unkind comments will be banished, rebuked, and returned straight back to sender. You are always welcome to share what resonated. You can never overshare too much with me as long as it's done respectfully. Even commenting your pile or leaving an emoji supports the channel more than you could ever know. And if you do enjoy this reading, please feel free to like, comment, hype, share, and subscribe. That is the best and easiest way to support me, and it's completely free. I'm sending you so much love and positive energy. Take care, and I will see you at your chosen pile, collective. Hi Pile 1 collective. If you chose the Witchy Magic Tarot and you chose the Snake sticker and you chose pile 1, you are in the correct place. Welcome to your reading, friends. If you would like a full breakdown regarding everything this reading will entail, please check out my introduction. I go through absolutely everything there. I will also leave some details in the pinned comment below for your reference. I would recommend checking at least one of those out so you know what to expect from this reading today. But today's reading is titled The Truth, Why You're So Lovable and Way More Amazing Than You Think. Your insecurities need a reality check. And just a very brief overview here. Imagine me as Tarot Joe Goldberg peeking around the metaphysical corner, seeing your potential, noticing you spiraling over things you don't need to worry about, and I'm like, it's okay, I can fix it, I can fix you. Not literally, don't panic, but spiritually, that's the level of dramatic, delusional devotion I am bringing to your confidence today. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. I don't know whether I will succeed, but I am basically stalking your self-worth. Like, babe, you don't even know how amazing you are yet, but don't worry, I'm going to tell you, I've got this. So we're starting off the reading with the first 3 cards, and this will be the section where we identify a core insecurity or wound. We look at where it might have come from, and then we move on to the I don't know her portion of the reading. That's the part where we abandon this insecurity for good. That's the part where we hype you up, remind you why you're iconic, and give your insecurities the eviction notice they didn't even know was coming. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. If you did miss the intro, that's where we're going to be reminding you of the truth, and that's that you're far more amazing, lovable, powerful, and magical than you even realize. So without hesitation, let's get started and have a look at the first 3 cards we pulled for you. I'm just going to move your little snake sticker to one side for now so we can focus on these cards. So starting off here on the left, we have got the 7 of Swords reversed. We've got Temperance reversed, and we've got the King of Pentacles upright. Pile 1, your insecurity is built on a lie that you have been telling yourself for essentially as long as you can remember. For some of you, it's been with you since childhood, so deeply woven into the structure of your identity that it actually feels like a part of your personality, not something separate from you. It is a belief that has sunk I want to say like so far into the bones of who you are that you have mistaken it for truth. But the interesting part is that on a deep soul level, because we have that King of Pentacles upright showing up, you do know your own worth. You do know deep down, don't argue with me, you do know that you're capable, you're talented, you're sovereign, and you're very, very valuable. And you know deep down that when others don't see that or don't treat you as such, it doesn't erase the truth of it. But the self-deception aspect creeps in when you guys convince yourselves that the part of you that believes you're strong and capable, when you convince yourselves that somehow that is the lie, when in reality, the lie is the part of you that says you're not. And you get confused because this insecurity is so old and it's so familiar that it feels like the responsible or humble or realistic narrative. But here it's like humility kind of taken too far, like you have been too humble. You know, humility left unchecked can quite easily dissolve into something like an inferiority complex. And that is a huge theme for you here, Pal One. You are far, far, far too humble for your own good. And I do just want to say, like, humility is beautiful. Humility keeps the world in balance. But too much humility becomes a prison at times. It becomes the belief that everyone else is more qualified, more knowledgeable, more talented, more deserving. It becomes the instinct to step aside and kind of shrink so that others can shine, even though you are just as capable, if not more capable. You know, many of the people you look at and you somehow think that they know better than you, they don't. Some of them don't even know 5% of what you know. They're just louder, they're just more confident, they're just more willing to kind of bluff their way into opportunities. Meanwhile, you might kind of hold yourself back because of that small and quiet voice convincing you, saying to you like, oh, let somebody else do it, they're probably better. But they're not, they just weren't told that they couldn't. And you know, this self-deception, when we talk about it, I just want you guys to know this is rarely a conscious thing that we're doing. It's not like we walk around with this actively thinking to ourselves like, oh, time to create a self-limiting belief today. Nobody does that. It's more subtle than that. It's whispers, I suppose, rather than shouts. And you don't even realize it's doing what it does until that familiar feeling hits, you know, that self-doubt, that needing to shrink, the comparing, maybe feeling less than, you know, not trusting your own capability. It feels like this cold hard fact, but it's just a story repeated so long that it's kind of turned into law, is what I want to say. And this insecurity, it really does feel like folklore. Like, imagine you are a kid and your parent tells you, don't go under that bridge, like a troll lives there and they'll take you to troll land, they'll kidnap you or something. And when you're a kid and when you're impressionable, you believe that with ease. And, you know, maybe then as a teenager, you don't fully believe in the bridge troll anymore, but maybe you still hesitate a little bit near the bridge. Maybe when you're out drinking with your friends, you're like, hey guys, let's go a different way. Like, maybe we won't go under this bridge, just in case, you know? And, you know, even when you're 30, 40, 50 years old and you return to your hometown to visit your parents, a part of you still instinctively avoids that bridge. Maybe you don't drive under it, even though rationally you know that the troll isn't real. That's your insecurity here. Like, even when you have outgrown it, even when you know logically it's false, a tiny part of you still reacts like it might be true. There's a tiny twinge in your body of like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't. It lingers in that instinct of hesitation, in the like not quite trusting yourself. It shows up in the ways that you avoid the metaphorical bridge. And yeah, it doesn't always show up as like obvious negative self-talk. It can show up quietly in more, I guess, like socially accepted forms of self-rejection. You know, maybe this is you deflecting compliments. Somebody tells you you're great at something and you're immediately shutting it down like, oh no, I'm not, it's nothing, like this person's better. This could be you downplaying your own talent. Somebody says like, oh hey, why don't you make a career from that, you'd be amazing at it. And you're like, oh, this little thing, this is just a hobby, like I could never publish that book, you know, leave it to the real writers, the real authors, leave it to the experts. Or, you know, believing that other people possess some like secret knowledge or special ingredient that makes things possible for them and impossible for you. But the truth is they don't actually know more. They don't have secret access. they are just maybe not held back by the same inherited story that you have had to carry. This insecurity for you guys feels like it originated with someone who held power over the development of your identity. So maybe a parent, a caregiver, a sibling, a friend group, a partner, a teacher, but it was someone who consistently undermined you. Maybe someone who highlighted weaknesses instead of strengths, or who kind of like wrote your story for you before you had a chance to define who you are. Saturn, Capricorn, and Aquarius energy is showing up strongly here. There are definitely themes about long-term lessons, long-term growth, earning everything the hard way that is coming through. You were never just handed praise or validation. You weren't encouraged maybe the way you should have been, and in some cases you were the one who felt constantly criticized or mocked or doubted. There is also something specific coming through here about emotional enmeshment. I don't know whether that's the right word. I think it is. Sometimes words just like come up in my head and I'm not quite sure how to pronounce them, but I'm seeing enmeshment. I don't know whether it's enmeshment or enmeshment. Anyway, I hope you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's like some of you took on adult responsibilities and emotions far too young. Like you were the emotional backbone of a household, a relationship, a friendship. You could have been valued for what you provided rather than who you were. Others of you could have been denied your own autonomy to the point where you were made to feel like you couldn't survive without somebody else telling you what to do. And for many of you, this could have shaped how you view certain relationships, how you view your own independence, trust, and your own capability. Someone else's emotions could have become your emotions. Somebody else's limitations could have become your limitations. Somebody else's fears could have become your fears. Their voice became your internal narrator without you realizing. And yet, Paolon, throughout all this, you were always the King of Pentacles. You were always capable, steady, resourceful, strong, able to build stability from nothing, able to handle chaos with more grace than anyone ever gave you credit for, is what I want to say. Like, even when no one clapped for you, even when no one supported you, or that's how it felt, even when no one believed in you, or that's how it felt, a part of you always knew. And when your confidence kind of like flares up in those moments where you say like, maybe I can do this, like maybe I've got this, maybe it's possible for me, that isn't delusion. That is your truth trying to break through. The real self-deception was ever believing that you weren't enough, that you couldn't do it. And a lot of this instability that you felt, it wasn't failure, it was carrying emotional loads that were far too heavy, reacting to environments that weren't safe, and surviving chaos that you quite frankly didn't create and you should have never been responsible for. You weren't inconsistent, you were overwhelmed, you were overburdened maybe, but you survived, you adapted, you probably handled things people twice your age couldn't. And if you ever did have like emotional outbursts, they were never a sign of weakness. They were probably just signs that you have been absorbing too much for way too long. This insecurity, it doesn't even feel like really yours. It was inherited, conditioned, absorbed, passed down or projected onto you throughout time. But the King of Pentacles within you, that person is rising. They are trying to rewrite the law. They're breaking the cycle. They're like dissolving this myth of the troll under the bridge coming to get you. You are finally realizing that the story you were told about yourself wasn't the truth. You are capable, you are talented, you are stable, you are so strong, and you are more than enough, and you always have been. And with that, we are now going to move to the deep dive section, the hype you up section, which I'm really excited for, pal one. So I'm going to put these cards to one side so we can look at your next few. Okay, pal one, so let's have a look at why you are absolutely amazing and way more amazing than you realise. So starting over here on the left, we have got the Ten of Cups reversed, clarified by the Nine of Swords. Okay. We've got the Five of Swords reversed, clarified by the Five of Cups reversed. And we've got the Six of Wands, clarified by the Three of Cups. Okay, beautiful. And from the Modern Witch Spiritual Deck Oracle, we've got Noise. And from the Archetypes Oracle, we have got Knight, light attributes, loyalty, romance, and chivalry, a love of honor, and shadow attributes, allegiance to a destructive ruler or principal, romantic delusions. Pile 1, this combination, the Ten of Cups reverse and the Nine of Swords, the immediate message I'm getting is like, you survived what was supposed to break you. Like, this combination screams one thing. You essentially became the person you are now. You did that without having the emotional support, stability, or safe environment that people require, usually just to function. And you built emotional maturity in conditions where other people would have collapsed. This is giving kind of like I raised myself energy. This is giving like I became my own safe space. This is, nobody taught me emotional regulation, so I learned it through suffering, and I still turned out compassionate as heck. Like, you didn't grow up with the emotional blueprint you deserved, but you refuse to let chaos or heartbreak turn you cruel. And that is so incredibly rare. Like, that's powerful. That is truly iconic. A lot of people take credit for being emotionally healthy adults because they had supportive families, maybe more stable childhoods, more encouragement, they had role models. And it feels like for you, there's some semblance of like you had none of that, and you still grew into the person who everyone goes to for advice. Like, the Ten of Cups reverse paired with the Nine of Swords, it does give unhappy home energy, I'm not going to lie, but I do want to unpack that carefully because I can almost hear some of you brushing that off and saying things like, oh, my home wasn't that bad, like other people had it worse, my friend had a really traumatic childhood, so mine doesn't really count, and things of that nature. But the thing is, like, your pain doesn't need to match somebody else's for it to be valid. And what I'm seeing here for many of you, it's not necessarily like an obvious, dramatic, visible kind of unhappiness, but more of a subtle, secret, deeply internalized one, like the kind that gets overlooked because on the surface everything looks like it's fine, is something I'm getting. So this might not be everyone's story, but for some of you, you maybe did grow up in families that functioned well enough on paper, so maybe a reasonably nice house, stable finances, parents who were still together, and everyone around you acted like you were lucky, like you had nothing to complain about, or like you were ungrateful if you did struggle emotionally. But underneath that, I guess, like glossy surface, the emotional climate of the house could have been very cold, it could have been dismissive, critical, imbalanced, or quietly dysfunctional. Maybe you had your material needs met as just one example, but your emotional needs were ignored or minimized or misunderstood. Maybe your parents were technically still together and people told you that that was a privilege, but you knew the energy in that house felt off, heavy, unsafe, or very lonely. Or maybe like whenever you struggled with your mental health or you felt overwhelmed or you acted out, it was kind of met with like, what's wrong with you? You have everything. You should be grateful. When in reality, you had everything except what you actually needed, which could have been emotional attunement, validation, softness, safety, warmth, someone understanding you, someone seeing you. And even if this wasn't the family dynamic specifically, this could also be the result of growing up in an environment where you just constantly felt like you were carrying things alone. So for some of you, this could be more about the way you felt about yourself, the self-doubt, the insecurity, the internalized criticism, shaped by the people around you. This feels like the teenager crying into their pillow with nobody to comfort them, the child lying awake at night feeling this indescribable loneliness, feeling like there's nobody in the world who gets them, there's nobody who ever will. This is the young adult drowning in mental anguish, feeling like they have no support, no safety net, no one to say to them like, I'm here, I see you, and it's okay. And you could have internalized some of that as normal because you didn't know any different. You didn't know that other kids, maybe next door to you, maybe down the street to you, were being comforted, soothed, supported through that. You didn't know that you were carrying burdens far too heavy for your age, and yet you carried them anyway. And Spirit wants you to know how fucking amazing you are for that, because there are people who could not have even endured half of what you've endured. There are people who had, I guess, more obvious trauma sitting next to you and they received support. You had that more hidden trauma and you received silence. And that kind of emotional invisibility can wound in ways that are truly difficult to articulate, but if you know, you know. And yet you held yourself, you saved yourself, you sat with yourself through those nights where you cried alone. You essentially became your own hero because you realized that no one else was coming to save you. And that is the essence of this night card. It's already shining through. You were the child who felt at times like you had nobody, and you became the adult who learned to hold themselves with compassion. Compassion that nobody else taught them either. And you became the king in the process of that. Slow and steady and strong and self-built. And I want you to listen to something right now. And I need you to hear this clearly, because some of you really need to hear it. I need you to stop comparing your journey to other people's. People truly have no idea what you have survived, and they never will, because you survived it quietly, gracefully, invisibly, and they only ever saw the surface, not the storm beneath, so they can never understand that. They can't. The Five of Swords and the Five of Cups reversed. This is just absolutely stunning to me, to be quite honest, pal one. You know, this points to your resilience coming through in ways you don't even recognize. This is you not only healing, but healing in a way where you outright refuse to turn into the people who wounded you. You could have very easily become bitter, become cruel, cold, ego-driven, controlling, defensive, and honestly, nobody could have blamed you for that. Many people go through far, far less and still become hardened and very cynical and destructive, but you chose compassion, you chose introspection, you chose understanding, you chose peace, you chose healing. And that level of emotional maturity that you've developed is genuinely unreal. Like, some of you could have even reached a place where you can look at people who hurt you and you think, like, they weren't evil, they were afraid. Like, they projected their fears onto me and they didn't know any better. They acted from insecurity. And even if anger is still part of your process, which is totally valid if it is, I do see many of you reaching a deeper truth, and that's that you no longer need to carry their story. You no longer need to absorb their projections. You don't need to bend to their expectations or like overcorrect to deserve love. You fought so hard, so unbelievably hard to protect your peace, and I'm so proud of you for that, pal one. For some of you, this meant doing really hard things, you know, going no contact or low contact, stepping away from people who once defined your reality. And that's not a simple thing to do, especially with things like enmeshment. If that's been part of your story ever, you know, when somebody else's emotions felt like your responsibility, when your identity blended with theirs, when you were conditioned to always put them first, walking away from that feels almost like leaving behind a piece of yourself. But you did it anyway. You chose your peace, you chose your future, and you chose yourself. And that's why you're amazing, because choosing yourself was not easy. It was revolutionary. Every day you show up, even when you're not as far along as you want to be. That is you breaking a pattern. Every day you're showing yourself that those old narratives don't belong to you anymore. That is a day where you are doing amazing. And you're beginning to realize that when people treated you poorly or minimized your worth, it was not because you lacked anything, not ever. It was because they were acting from their own deeply rooted insecurities. You've always had the strength to stand on your own 2 feet. You've always been capable. You've always had wisdom beyond your years. You just needed a safe enough space to realize that. And you've been building that space for yourself from scratch. And that alone makes you incredible. I'm also hearing you were meant to be seen, especially with that 6 of Wands and with the 3 of Cups. Not just seen, but celebrated, cheered for. This is basically like spirit grabbing you by the shoulders and saying, look at how far you've come. Look at you. You know, this combination is beautiful. And I just want you to know, pal one, like, people are always celebrating you in ways you don't realize. People notice you, people respect you, people talk about the good you've done behind your back all the time. You definitely have that thing where you don't fully know how iconic you are, but everybody else does, and it's so annoying, pal one. You know, your friends really admire you, your co-workers respect you, strangers even sense your strength, your warmth, people root for you, people learn from you, people automatically feel safe with you, and they see you as a natural leader. You truly do underestimate how much people look up to you all the time. You just walk through life thinking like, oh, I'm just trying my best over here. And everyone else looks at you and they're like, look at them, like, look at what they've survived. Look at how kind they still are. Look at how strong they are. Your humility through it all makes you even more lovable. You know, this is big, like, main character, but they don't even know it energy. But it's in a very, like, soft, human, magnetic kind of way. People feel genuinely lucky to know you, Pal 1. But you don't celebrate yourself anywhere near as much as you should. It's like you're so used to kind of doing everything quietly and independently without really getting much recognition. You know, even the idea of being seen feels foreign to some of you, but I'm getting that you were born to be seen. Like, you were meant to be celebrated. You were meant to have people cheering you on, clinking glasses with you, appreciating you, recognizing you. You deserve joy and fun and play and connection and community too. You deserve to be surrounded by people who love you for who you are, not for what you can give to them. Some of you have a particular talent, a gift, something you were meant to share with the world, something creative and expressive and inspiring and magnetic. And Spirit is screaming. They're telling you, like, you walk through life saying like, oh, I'm just a guy, like, I'm just here, I'm just a guy, I'm just doing my thing. But they're saying like, you were never just a guy. You were always meant for more. This is fame energy, public recognition energy. Even if you don't want literal fame, because I know that's pretty uncomfortable for some of you guys, this is some kind of like acknowledgement, visibility, admiration, celebration. And the fact that it is coming after your shadow cards tells me that, like, even when no one praised you, even when no one recognized your talents, you still held on to that tiny spark inside that whispered, I am meant for something. And that whisper wasn't delusion, that wasn't the lie, that was the truth, it was the prophecy. You've always been meant to take up more space, to be seen, to be appreciated. I'm hearing to be revered. Is that the right word? I don't know. But you were meant to bring joy to people around you. And now it feels like you are entering this amazing era where you are allowed to have fun and to celebrate your wins truly and to feel proud of yourself. You deserve that. Feels like you're allowing yourself more joy now, Pal 1, and that's huge. And another thing about this, I mean, we kind of touched on it, but I do just want the point to sink in. Like, people are genuinely shocked when they realize that you don't see yourself the way that they see you. The right people, you know, the ones who actually admire you and view you as steady and capable and intelligent and inspiring, you know, someone who has absolutely huge potential, someone who could build an empire from nothing. These people, like, when they suggest to you something like, oh, like, you should do that, you'd be amazing at it, and you immediately respond with, oh, there's no way I could, like, that's not me, you know, I'm not confident, I'm not smart, I'm not capable enough for that. They are left staring at you like, what? What? That doesn't match the Pal 1 that I know. Because in their mind, you are that person. You know, if someone once made you believe that you weren't those things, and now a friend says, like, let's say, for example, somebody told you growing up that you weren't smart, but your friend identifies a gift you have, and they say, like, oh my god, you should get a career in XYZ, or you should get a degree in this, you're amazing at it. You could shrug it off with, like, oh, you know me, like, I could never. And they're genuinely just confused, because to them, you're like the smartest person that they know. They're like, what do you mean you could never? What do you mean you know me, I'm not smart? Like, I know you as the smartest person in any given room. You come across as, you know, this person who exudes competence, quietly powerful. And this disconnect only exists because you conditioned to adopt a much smaller story than the one that truly belongs to you. But you would honestly be so surprised by how amazed people are by you, how just differently they see you compared to how you were taught to view yourself. The moment anyone points out a gift or talent, whatever it is, it feels like you will be the first to humble yourself or to minimize it or to assume people are judging you or wondering why you are not further along. But in reality, people are in awe of you, Pal 1. They think you're confident, they think you're capable, they think that everything comes naturally to you because that's how you carry it, with this quiet King of Pentacles magnetism that never ever needs to announce itself. You know, the King of Pentacles doesn't have to walk in the room and be like, oh, look at me, I'm the King of Pentacles, because it just speaks for itself. people meet you and they might assume you've always been this grounded, this stable, this self-assured, which is why they are truly shocked when they find out that you have insecurities at all. You certainly don't carry yourself that way. Because the truth is, though, at your core, you are that grounded, you are that capable. You know, an insecurity got, I don't know why I want to use like injected, but injected into your story somewhere along the way, and it was something that was never meant for you. But even then, your sovereignty never left. Your internal kingdom didn't fall. Your divinity stayed fully intact beneath the wound. And the most iconic part of it is that you transmuted that pain into depth, into wisdom, into strength. And it laid the foundation of essentially like your hero's journey. Your greatness has always run deeper than your fears, pal one, and your success was always destined to outrun the insecurities that were never ever meant to define you. And that noise card, to me, it's kind of like the perfect way to tie all the themes of this reading together. You know, it ties back to everything we've said, really. Like every old belief, every projection, every criticism, every story you inherited, all of it was just noise. Not the truth, not your voice, not your identity. It was just noise. And you've carried so much noise in your head, so many voices, you know, whether it's parental criticism or expectations, projections, insults, comparisons, internalized doubt, fear-based beliefs. But the fact this card appears here means you're finally learning to recognize the difference between noise and intuition. And there is a powerful inner voice inside you that's getting louder, and you are outgrowing the mental clutter that once controlled you. Your clarity is increasing day by day by day. It's building. Your discernment is leveling up. You know, this card applauds you for learning how to quiet that inner chaos so that you can hear the truth behind it. You are learning to shut out the static and essentially tune into your own frequency. And the imagery on this card, it's so symbolic to me. It encapsulates your energy perfectly because the pattern on the Oracle card matches the pattern on like the back of the deck. Like the cards, this is the image on the back of them. Well, you know that because I showed you at the beginning, but yeah, they don't all look like this at the front is what I'm trying to say. And that says to me that Spirit is saying you were always the blueprint. You were always meant to be different. You were always meant to stand out. You were always meant to take up space. And now you're finally realizing that you don't have to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You are allowed to live loudly. You're allowed to feel deeply. You're allowed to be seen clearly. It's like you're filtering out the noise of old storylines so that you can hear the truth of your own voice. And that voice is so powerful. And I'm getting a message about this Knight card, and that message, it's basically saying like your loyalty was never the problem, you just gave it to the wrong people at times. You have always been loyal, devoted, romantic in the soul deep kind of way. You've always been honourable and consistent, but in the past it feels like maybe you gave that loyalty to people who weren't really capable of reciprocating it, people that you thought had the answers, maybe people you looked up to because they appeared confident or like they were an authority, like they were knowledgeable on things, but now it's like you're kind of realizing that they were just people. They were just people who made a lot of noise and looked confident, but they were people nonetheless. They were flawed, they were scared, they were projecting their own wounds. Some of you have felt like you had to stay loyal to a certain storyline that someone else wrote for you, almost as if it was like your responsibility to hold it all together, to carry it, to uphold it, to keep it alive. And I want you to hear this clearly now. You are allowed to put that down, okay? You do not have to carry the identity someone else carved out for you. When I say, you know, look how amazing you are despite everything, I don't want that to be misinterpreted as like, oh, look at how well you hold everything, so keep on holding it. No. You don't have to keep holding any of it. You've been carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. For some of you, this sense of loyalty became your default setting. You know, you've felt responsible your entire life, emotionally, practically, energetically, and somewhere along the way, you started believing that shrinking yourself was an act of loyalty. Like you had to dim your own light to keep someone else safe. It's like you being less, you being more quiet, smaller, more manageable, was protecting someone else's fears of being triggered. You became loyal to their idea of you and not your own truth. And for some reason, I'm getting one of the lyrics from A Father Figure by Taylor Swift, the one that's like, who's covered up your scandals or something. It's like some of you have been almost the emotional cover story your whole life, and it's like you've had to absorb the blame, the shame, the expectations, the roles, the silence. You kept the peace. You played the version of yourself that they wanted you to be because it made them look good. You might have erased your own brilliance at times because your authenticity would have kind of threatened the fragile image someone else needed to project. You weren't allowed to outshine somebody or surpass them or challenge the identity that they'd built around you staying small. So maybe you stayed in your lane, maybe you dimmed your ambitions, you softened your own dreams, you told yourself, I guess this isn't for me, when the truth is it always was. Examples of how this might show up, maybe this is you not pursuing higher education because your friend's whole identity was like being the smart one and you didn't want to outshine them. So you shrugged and you said, yeah, I guess I'm not academic like you, Betty. Guess I'm not smart like you. Even though you were just as capable, if not more so, the whole time. Or, maybe you didn't go after your dream career because your parents needed you to maintain some facade, to be safe, to be predictable, to be the presentable, performative child that they could brag about. And if you deviated from that script, suddenly it became like, oh, but how will that make us look? What will people think? How does that make me feel? As if your life belonged to them, and it never did. You've spent so many years being loyal to other people's comfort, other people's image, other people's wounds, other people's fears, but loyalty to someone else's projection is not loyalty, it's self-erasure. And the truth of this is, you were always meant for more. The empire was always yours. The King of Pentacles was always in your bones. It's like you were born with this innate stability, capability, stardom, this essence of royalty and perseverance. And then, somewhere along the lines, this insecurity was accidentally injected into the story, a storyline you were never meant to inherit. But this injection, it like seeped into your whole identity. Like, I'm picturing dye in water right now, like dye tainting the water. And it did shape you for a time, but it never ever replaced the original structure of who you were meant to be. Your foundation, your stability, your potential, your strength, and your regal self-worth that you possess, that stayed intact beneath everything. And now this is like you finally putting down that old responsibility, knowing that you do not have to be the emotional bodyguard for anyone anymore. You don't have to carry other people's fears or play a role that they cast you in that you were never meant to play. You don't have to be loyal to a story you've outgrown or one that just like never even fit in the first place. This is your Six of Wands era, and the whole point of that card is to show up and be the amazing person that you are so that you are seen. This is you getting to shine and be like the main character in your own story. No more shrinking or no more apologizing for existing. No more feeling responsible for how your success makes somebody else feel. Your light isn't the scandal here. Your dreams aren't embarrassing, your truth isn't the threat, and your greatness is not too much. You're allowed to be everything that you are, fully unapologetically. You're amazing, Power One, because you've learned that loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It doesn't mean shrinking yourself to fit a narrative that never belonged to you. It doesn't mean attaching yourself to identities or relationships that limit your growth. You've learned to be loyal to you, and that is such a powerful shift. Now your devotion is being redirected inwards towards saving yourself, choosing yourself, and honoring yourself. You are standing tall, you're refusing to hide, and you're stepping out of the shadows and into your own narrative. And it's honestly giving like public eye, leader, main character, meant to be seen energy. You were always meant to shine, and the fact you never let go of that dream, even when others tried to dim it, is why you're so incredible. So you're amazing because you survived invisible battles, you held yourself through years of loneliness, you healed without guidance, you broke cycles instead of repeating them, you became compassionate instead of bitter, you grew wiser than your circumstances, you chose peace over chaos, you stopped absorbing other people's stories, you inspire people too without even knowing it, you crowned yourself, and because you are the blueprint and you saved yourself from all of that. You are breathtaking because you are the softness that survived storms. You are the strength that grew in silence. You are that child who held themselves together, the teenager who kept going, and an adult who is rewriting their own destiny. You're the knight who became the king. And the thing is, the world hasn't even seen half of what you're capable of. You are so loved, Power One, and you're only just beginning to understand why. So that is what I'm getting for your reading, Power One, and that is where I am going to leave you today, my loves. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for sharing your energy with me. I appreciate you more than you could ever know. If you enjoyed this reading and you want to support the channel, the best ways to do that are super simple and they are free. Please like the video, please leave a comment, please hype, subscribe, share, whatever you feel able to do. All of that genuinely helps a small creator like me more than you could ever know, and it helps me keep doing what I'm doing. Even dropping an emoji or telling me which pal you picked if you don't feel comfortable sharing makes an absolutely huge difference to the algorithm. So if you're on the fence, please go for it if you can. I'd be really grateful. Thank you again for spending your time with me today. I adore you, pal one. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Hi, pal 2 collective. If you chose the Wandering Moon Tarot, and you chose the feather sticker, and you chose pal 2, you are in the correct place. Welcome to your reading, friends. If you would like a full breakdown regarding everything this reading will entail, please check out my introduction. I go through absolutely everything there. I will also leave some details in the pinned comment below for your reference. I would recommend checking at least one of those out so you know what to expect from this reading today. But today's reading is titled The Truth, Why You're So Lovable and Way More Amazing Than You Think. Your insecurities need a reality check. So just as a very brief overview here, imagine me as Tarot Joe Goldberg peeking around the metaphysical corner, seeing your potential, noticing you spiraling over things you don't need to worry about, and I'm like, it's okay. I can fix it. I can fix you. Not literally, don't panic, but spiritually, that's the level of dramatic delusional devotion I am bringing to your confidence today. I am basically stalking your self-worth and saying, babe, you don't even know how amazing you are yet, but don't worry, I'm going to tell you, we've got this. So the first part of the reading, this bit, the 3 cards that we're looking at now, that is going to be us identifying an insecurity or wound, looking at where it may have come from, and then we're going to move into the I don't know her portion of the reading, the bit where we properly hype you up, remind you why you're iconic, and give your insecurities the eviction notice they didn't even know was coming. So that is where the real magic is going to start. Because the truth is, you are far more amazing, lovable, powerful, and magical than you even realise, pal 2. With that said, without further hesitation, let's get on with the reading and let's have a look at your first 3 cards. I'm just going to pop your feather to one side for now. For some reason I'm hearing like the feather stiff as a board, so some of you could have played that when you were younger. That could be a confirmation. The movie The Craft could also be relevant. That's a random detail that was coming through. But yeah, let's have a look what we have. So over here on the left, we've got the Devil. We have got the Page of Moons, which is the Page of Cups. And we have got the 9 of Wands reversed. Pile 2. The energy here is tender and it's tangled. This is the kind of wound that didn't necessarily arrive incredibly loudly, but it sort of like quietly threaded itself through small moments, and it's these small moments where like you learnt to, I want to say, brace yourself. You know, it shaped how you move through the world, how you interact with it, how quickly you flinch before trusting, how deeply you love whilst guarding the softest parts of yourself. It's like how tightly you hold everything together because it never really felt safe to let it spill out. It's less a flaw, it's less an insecurity and more a bruise that sort of taught you to walk differently. You know, it's a shadow that learned to follow you, not because you wanted it to, but because life taught you to stay alert. And I really do relate to this. This next thing I'm going to say, I relate to this deeply, but the first thing that was coming through when I saw these cards was like somebody who feels deeply. And I know what it feels like to move through the world thinking like, this world is just too big, it's too harsh, it's too cold for someone like me, you know, that feeling of being tender in a place that seems built for people with naturally thicker skin. The fear that vulnerability isn't just unsafe, it's actively dangerous. Like the Devil card showing up here, it might represent the world as a whole, or it represents a system of authority, or just some circumstance that you went through that taught you that softness equals risk, sensitivity equals punishment, love equals exposure. And so you learn to kind of shrink that part of yourself, maybe to lock it up, or to carry it quietly, to, I guess, never let anyone see how much you actually feel, because nobody ever gave you a safe place to put it. One thing I want to say for you guys who chose pile 2 is that your core wound is very much tied to a trapped inner child, a part of you that learned very, very early on, too early on, that softness wasn't safe, vulnerability wasn't safe, feeling things wasn't safe. You might have grown up under systems of oppression in some way, under systems of control, expectation, emotional repression. And even if you are physically free now, even if you live your life and you're independent and you're self-sufficient and you're fully able to take care of yourself, a part of you, like a tiny part of you, still sometimes feels like you're under someone else's rules, and you kind of live your life that way sometimes, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, or almost like you're not allowed to be fully human without consequences, is something that I'm getting. And for many of you, this can show up as difficulty trusting people or opening up to people, even the people you want to trust. This could be difficulty crying or difficulty letting anyone see that there is softness inside of you. You know, it feels like sensitivity for you was either punished or mocked or misunderstood or taken advantage of. And so a long time ago, maybe you told yourself, you know, that part of me is dangerous, that part of me gets me hurt. And that honestly breaks my fucking heart, pal, too. Like, genuinely, that breaks my heart, because your sensitivity is stunning. Like, your softness is so powerful. The way you feel things so deeply is a gift, especially in a world where it feels like so many people are cold or shut off or apathetic or emotionally unavailable. But instead of being affirmed for that, you were taught through people or through painful experiences that your tenderness made you weak or naive or easy to use. And so you did what children do, you know, you adapted, you shut that down, you hid the most beautiful part of yourself because nobody ever told you it was safe to let it out. There's something here about being deeply, deeply misunderstood, feeling like you were doing something wrong simply by existing as your sensitive, imaginative, intuitive self. And at some point, it's like you created some kind of emotional armor, you know, not necessarily because you wanted to, but because you had to. You know, you might have learned to bottle everything up. You learned to be strong because nobody ever said that it was okay for you to be human. It's like the emotional body tried to detach from its own vulnerability, almost the way like someone in battle might try to sever a limb because they think it's slowing them down. They think they're just dragging it along, that it's not serving a purpose. But that limb is crying out to that soldier and saying like, I'm still here, I'm useful, I want to help you, you just have to acknowledge me. This insecurity also ties into survival mode, you know, long-term, exhausting, borderline soul-crushing at times survival mode. Many of you coped by numbing for some time, and maybe through habits, addictions, distractions, or just behaviours that you look back on now and you think like, that wasn't really me. And it doesn't really matter what the behaviour is. It doesn't have to be like a full-blown addiction. But for some of you, it could be, you know, overeating, restrictive eating, binge drinking, substances, dissociation, phone addiction, hyper-schmexuality, or even just feeling like you were falling into the wrong crowds or patterns. And you weren't being bad, you were exhausted, you were overwhelmed, you were trying to survive with a nervous system that was overloaded, overstimulated, or completely shut down and numbed out. And truly, like, pal 2, I can't even imagine how exhausting that must have been for you. You know, to care so deeply, to love so hard, to feel so much, and to have nobody tell you that that was a strength. Nobody to tell you that there was a safer place for all of that love and that tenderness to go. Some of you, it's like you sometimes get insecure when you look back at old versions of yourself and you sort of cringe. And you're like, I don't even recognize that person. But I want you to hear me when I say this. You were doing your best with what you had. You were coping, you were tired, and you always had a voice inside whispering like, I'm better than this, I don't want to be here. You always knew that the behaviours weren't really you. They were a response to the emotional cage that you felt trapped in. There is a wound here for some of you. It might not apply to everyone, but it is around self-abandonment. You know, not because you ever wanted to abandon yourself, but because you were made to feel like you, as you are or as you were, that wasn't enough, or you were too much, you know, too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, too soft, too imaginative, too loving. How can anyone be too loving? Or, maybe for some of you on the opposite side, not emotional enough, or not affectionate enough, not expressive enough. You could never win, basically. Like, it felt as though you were damned either way, or you didn't perform those things in the way somebody wanted you to and you felt wrong for that. The devil, also brings in those themes of control. Maybe for some of you, there was religious pressure or these moral expectations, a system or environment where behavior was really strictly, tightly monitored. You were micromanaged, or where any kind of joy or curiosity or yearning was like stifled, it was shut out, maybe where vulnerability was labeled as a sin or a weakness, and you internalized this idea that you had to be perfect in order to be lovable, which is simply not true. You are lovable, pal, too, because you exist. For some of you even, this kind of goes into the realms of like scapegoat energy, being blamed for things you didn't do, or being labeled the problem because it was easier for other people to label you that than it was for them to take accountability. It's almost like how people use the devil as a concept as a scapegoat for their own behavior. Like, the devil made me do it. Like, no, you did that. Own it. Devil didn't make you do shit. Let's stop lying. Some of you grew up being the one that everyone projected onto. If you rebelled, you were bad. If you shut down, you were cold. If you tried to be yourself, that was wrong too. And so you learned to repress your truth, or you went, I don't want to say into your villain era, but it could have felt like that. And it's simply because the world already cast you in that role. But none of that was actually the real you. Your real self is the Page of Cups, imaginative, soft, intuitive, magical, emotionally rich. And the reason this wound hurt so much is because it was this part of you that was punished, not your shadow. Your heart was punished, your creativity, your wonder, your innocence, your ability to love fiercely and deeply. And with the Nine of Wands reversed, I feel that exhaustion. I feel the burnout that comes from constantly guarding your heart, the fear of ever letting the walls down even one tiny inch. That belief that, if I rest, everything will fall apart, or if I let people see the real me, they won't stay. But the truth is, you have already come so far. You have broken so many chains already. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to be soft. You're allowed to feel again. And most importantly, you are allowed to put down the armor of hypervigilance that was never meant to be yours in the first place. You were never ever the villain, Paltu. You were never too much. You were never broken. You were simply a child or a young person trying to keep themselves safe in an environment that didn't know quite how to love you the ways you deserved and the ways you needed. But that core essence of you, that magical, emotional, intuitive, imaginative, deeply feeling part, that was always your strength. It was never your weakness. And, that part is calling out to you now. And it's saying, please don't abandon me again. I'm not the enemy here. I am the key. And it feels like you're finally ready to hear about that, Paltu, and why that's so amazing. And with that said, we are going to look at your next few cards. We are now moving on to the Hype You Up section. So we're going to be discovering why you are so incredible and amazing, much more than you realise, Paltu. So I'm going to move these 3 cards to one side for now so we can look at your next ones. So Paltu, welcome to your I don't know her portion of the reading. This is the bit where we look at your insecurities, we look them dead in the eye, and we say, absolutely not, that's not the truth of who we are. We've just spent time talking about how tender and tangled and intense your inner world has been, and how you've had to shut parts of yourself down just to survive, and how your nervous system got fried in the process of that, and how your softness felt like a liability in a world that didn't know how to hold it. But now we're moving into the section where we remind you why you're actually incredible, why your softness is a superpower, and why your past does not disqualify you from the life you want. It actually initiated you into it. So let's have a look at what we pulled. We have got, over here on the left, the Wheel of Fortune reversed, clarified by the 7 of Cups. We have got the 7 of Wands reversed, clarified by the 5 of Stars, which is the 5 of Pentacles. And we have got the Magician. And clarifying the Magician, we've got a Page of Wands. Okay, that's cool. That's really, really cool, Paltu. I love that for you. And from the Modern Witch Spiritual deck, we have got Relationships. And from your Archetypes Oracle, we have got Liberator. This has come through before in a recent read. I can't remember which one it was, but we have Liberator. And I love this card. Light attributes, freeing yourself and others from outmoded beliefs, releasing negative thought patterns. Okay, that's really interesting because obviously we just got the Devil. Shadow attributes, imposing your own tyranny over those you claim to liberate. Maybe tyranny over yourself, pal, too. That could be relevant. Ignoring legitimate constraints. Okay. Could be something about like not feeling like you have to pressure yourself to be further along than you are, because there are legitimate constraints here. Like, you have been through a heck of a lot. It's okay to acknowledge that. Oh, let me make sure the cards are in frame. Don't know why. I'm just like almost start singing a Christmas song. Oh, this deck is beautiful, by the way. I haven't used it in ages, but I'm glad I did because it's gorgeous. I got it from Etsy. Yeah, okay, right. With the Wheel of Fortune reversed and the Seven of Cups, I want you to know that you were never ever lost. I'm hearing you were dreaming your way out, because your imagination power too, insanely powerful too. You're probably a very powerful manifester. And I also want you to know, like, any of the chaos you've been through, it truly hasn't been for no reason. Like, your insecurity might tell you that you are stuck or you're unlucky or you're behind, or it might make you feel like you've wasted your time. But the Wheel of Fortune reverse with the Seven of Cups, that is giving me a very, very different story to the one you've been telling yourself. This is not failure energy, you know. This tells me that you've been doing some deep soul searching in a hostile world. It's that energy. You know, this is those moments where you've had to go inwards because the environment around you didn't feel safe. And that is one of the most beautiful and amazing things about you, pal, too. It's your imagination. You know, the way your inner world is so vivid and so rich, so layered, that you could build entire realities in your mind when the one that you were living in felt unkind or unsafe or just not meant for you in that moment. You know, maybe when you were a child, you were somebody who would often get told off for daydreaming or for zoning out, you know, getting lost in a fantasy, not paying attention. Hello, fellow ADHDers. Having your head in the clouds, that sort of thing. And yes, you know, sometimes daydreaming can become a way to escape reality to the point when nothing feels real anymore. But the truth of the matter is that imagination that you possess is part of what makes you amazing, and it probably kept you alive when you were younger. Like, Paltu, I think you've always had that ache. I don't know why I'm getting ache, but that ache for more, you know, that sense that you were meant for something different, not just in a really like grand or dramatic way, but even in terms of your everyday life. A different kind of love, a different lifestyle, a different way of being. The Seven of Cups says that your soul has always recognised different paths, different versions of you, different possibilities, even when nobody else could see them, even when nobody else really understood them. Maybe to other people your dreams didn't feel realistic. Maybe you were told, like, oh, that's not meant for someone like you, whoever that may be. Maybe people made you feel silly or delusional or misguided for wanting some of the things you wanted. So a part of you tried to repress those dreams. Maybe you tried to push them down or to move on. But the thing is, they never really left. I think sometimes you got to the point where you said, if I can't have my dreams, I'll have nothing. And that could have led to behaviours that kind of aligned with self-abandonment, for those of you where that does apply. But the point is, you didn't actually let them go. They didn't leave. You know, somewhere deep inside you, there's always been this little secret pocket of hope, you know, this private, like, cinema in your mind where you could watch yourself living differently, and that is something you might have used to manifest. And I think that's so beautiful, and Spirit thinks that's so incredible too. You know, maybe you tended to dissociate a lot when you were younger. You know, maybe there have been times in your life where it's almost like you didn't feel as though it was you in your physical body. Some of you could astral travel as well, that's coming through. But maybe there were times where you didn't fully feel like the main character in your own life. You sometimes felt more like an NPC wandering around in a world that you didn't really choose, like just doing what you had to do, you know, going through the motions. while the real you existed somewhere else entirely in your imagination. And that's that devil energy from the wound. It's sort of feeling powerless in your own body, feeling like life was happening to you, not through you. And honestly, when it doesn't feel like you have any control or autonomy in your life in those moments, it is easy to think like, oh, nothing matters, so I'll just do whatever, like, because none of this is real anyway, it feels like a game. That's the energy that I'm getting. And I just want you to know, if you ever felt that way, and maybe you're insecure about some of the ways you acted or didn't act during those moments, it's not ever because you were lazy or broken or because you didn't care. That's sometimes what it can look like when a really, really, really sensitive soul lives in survival mode for too long. And yet, even in that place, even when you were maybe going through like the darkest moments of your soul's life, you never ever fully let go of that vision. Even during moments where things felt directionless, there was always a pull to like, I know I can be doing better than this, like that mentality. Even when you thought you'd messed everything up, even when you thought your dreams were too delusional or unreachable, a part of you still held on to them. You might have thought, what if I just gave this version of me a tiny bit of space? And that tiny bit of space was like enough for you to start blooming, is something that I'm getting. You are truly amazing, pal, too, because you never let your heart stop wanting what it wants. Even during those moments where you might have been numbing, even when you felt lost, even when you felt like you'd fallen into the same old patterns, and even when you did that again and again, if it's something you went through multiple times, you've been willing to try, to grow, to change, to break loops, even when sometimes it felt like you would go right back to the start. And do you even realize how rare that is? Do you realize how many people go their whole lives on autopilot, never questioning anything, never allowing themselves to want more, never daring to, never examining their own patterns because that's just how it is? But you said, like, no, I'm meant for more than just surviving, and that alone makes you incredible. You were never directionless. You were being guided by your own inner visions, even when you didn't know it. And you're not lost. You're still not lost. You are multi-talented. You are multi-layered, multi-dimensional. And your soul has always known that there were many paths you were meant to explore. You don't just have to pick one, is something they're saying, because you're incredible at multiple things. Maybe you even struggled to choose a pile today, and they're saying you don't have to pick just one. If you want to listen to two, or more. You're meant for more, pal, too. And the message I'm getting when I look at the Seven of Swords reversed and the Five of Pentacles, I'm hearing you're not the villain. You're the one who chose the truth. And from this energy, I'm getting this vibe of like you saying, I chose myself even if it cost me. And that wasn't easy because of this insecurity, this wound. It would sometimes show up, and it said, if I show who I really am, I'll be rejected. If I speak up, I'll be abandoned. If I make a different choice, I'll be shut out. And for a lot of you, that fear wasn't unfounded, because maybe it did happen. There is such a strong sense here of you knowing deep down that being honest about who you are and what you believe and what you're healing from, what you will and won't tolerate, would mean that you were, I'm hearing, no longer part of the club. It doesn't have to be a literal club, but a community of some kind maybe, and you did it anyway. And that's what makes you amazing. The Seven of Swords reversed, it's the end of the self-deception. It's the moment you decided you couldn't lie to yourself anymore about what you wanted, about who you are, and about what you stand for. It's the moment where the weight of the secrecy, the masking, the pretending, or the staying silent became too heavy to carry. And the Five of Pentacles is the part of the story where, maybe honestly that did leave you feeling out in the cold for a while. It left you feeling misunderstood or excluded or alone. But that cold was actually the first breath of fresh air you'd had in years. It felt like the kind of cold you feel after stepping out from a stuffy room, like being in a stuffy room your whole life. Is it scary at first? Yeah. Is it lonely at first? Yeah. But it's freedom. It's like the first taste of freedom. It's real and it's honest. But you might have made choices that cost you relationships, cost you social circles, status, financial security, approval. It could be leaving a job, stepping out of a toxic workplace, calling out corruption. saying no to a particular lifestyle that everyone else around you was still engaging in, stepping away from certain friends that weren't good for you, walking away from gossip or validation seeking, or like situationships that fed your emptiness but starved your soul. Some of you may have come out, like sexuality wise, you've come out and said, this is who I am, or you've changed careers, or you've altered your appearance, you've embraced your identity, or like you've just decided in some way, I'm not going to pretend anymore, like not for you, not for anyone. And yeah, people may have villainized you for it, but you were never ever the villain. You were the one who was brave enough to say, silence kept me safe once, it doesn't anymore. You know, this mask kept me alive once, but now it's harming me. If I keep lying to myself, my inner child will never get the life they deserve. You acknowledge that. And you're amazing because you knew that there would be consequences. You knew you might lose people, you might lose stability, or you might lose something familiar, you might lose the club, and you still chose truth over self-abandonment. You chose your inner child over other people's comfort. You chose liberation over performative loyalty. And what I love about you, Paltu, is that you don't do this from a place of coldness. You still care, very much so. You still love. You know, the relationships oracle card says it's okay to love people from a distance. It's okay to care deeply about someone and still know that staying close to them would mean betraying yourself. And you're incredible because you can hold both truths in your hand. This is you saying, you know, I love you, but I love me more. And I won't keep shrinking myself to make you comfortable. Some of you have literally been the black sheep, the rebel, the one who changed, the one people gossip about, like, who do they think they are now? But you're exactly who you think you are, like, and your guides are saying you're amazing. You know, that willingness to be brave and stand alone, to be misunderstood, to be the one who turns around and walks away from a line that everyone else is standing in, that is one of your greatest strengths, and it always has been. You are a liberator, Paltu, and the way your inner child speaks up is so powerful. The example I'm getting, it kind of reminds me of like how children just say things, like not in a malicious way, but in that blunt, innocent, curious way. And they do this obviously, you know, because it's before they've learned all the social rules. Like when a kid sees someone in a wheelchair, let's say, if they've never seen a person in a wheelchair before, they might ask loud enough for everyone to hear, like, oh, what's wrong with that person's legs? Or, you know, they see a person of colour in a very white area, or a gay couple holding hands, and if they haven't been exposed to that before, they're like, oh, why is that person's skin brown? Or why are those men holding hands? And, you know, the parent will panic and say like, oh, don't say that, like that's rude, because obviously as adults we understand the social layers, we understand the taboo, the politics, the history, but, you know, generally the child isn't being hateful, and because children aren't hateful until adults teach them to be hateful. They're just noticing something and they're just wanting to understand it. And, you know, I'm not saying that's you, like you're out here pointing at strangers and interrogating them. Obviously, people don't owe anyone that emotional labour to answer some of those deeply layered questions. But there is something of that, like, honest inner child in you. You have this, like, pure, curious truth inside you. And unlike an actual child, you now have the awareness and the nuance and the compassion to hold that truth very responsibly. You are aware that some things you say or some things you stand for might not make you popular. Some things might get you side-eyed, might get you labelled difficult, and you still choose to stand in it anyway. And that makes you incredible. And just to give, like, one random example of, you know, standing alone with something, it doesn't have to be anything like this for you. It could be something completely random. It could be smaller than this. It could be bigger than this. But just the one that's springing into my mind, like this could be sobriety, for example, or, you know, stepping away from the way you used to numb. Like if your whole friendship group in this scenario bonded over getting drunk or getting high or going out every weekend, or, you know, gossiping about people or chasing validation. And, you know, at some point you realise, you know what, this isn't actually me, like this is just what I'm using to cope. So you decided to stop engaging with that, or you decided to cut back, or to just like not make that your whole shtick anymore. And suddenly your friends are saying like, oh, you're no fun, you've changed, and they're shutting you out, like you're not part of the club anymore. And I do just want to say, like, I don't mean that people who drink and people who don't can't be friends, but obviously there's a big difference between like people who drink socially or casually and like addiction or relying on it as a crutch. But I do just want to mention that because, you know, I've got friends where one of us isn't drinking for a time because of meds or because of health stuff, and we still go out and we have a great time because the friendship is based on love, not just substances. And the point is here, if you take, it doesn't have to be alcohol for you, but if you take the numbing agent away and you realize you don't actually like the people you're with that much, and that the only thing holding the relationship together is the habit, that tells you everything. You know, you choosing yourself, your body, your mental health, your peace, even when it means losing the club, is such a brave thing. And your inner child is so, so proud of you for that, because for once, you're not prioritizing fitting in over feeling safe. You are saying, I'd rather stand alone than stand next to people I can only tolerate when I'm numb. And that is icon behavior. It's like you've liberated yourself from outdated beliefs, dogma, shame-based conditioning, emotional repression. And in doing so, you show others that it's possible too. You know, you're the one who asks, why do we actually do it this way? Like, does it even make sense? Does this hurt people? Like a child asking an honest question about something society labels taboo. It's not to be cruel, but because their inner compass craves that truth. Your inner child sometimes bursts right out of you and says the thing that nobody else wants to say, and spirit loves that about you. You're learning to do it with discernment and compassion, yes, but you're not afraid. You're not as afraid as you once were to, I guess, acknowledge the elephant in the room. You know, you might be someone who exposes toxic patterns in families, in workplaces, friend groups, or within yourself, but you're doing it to free people, not to control them. Silence for you once meant safety, but it could no longer be your story. And if you ever doubt whether you did the right thing in whatever context that is, whether it's walking away from certain people or jobs or lifestyles or environments, please know that you did. Like, you cooperated with your healing. You said yes to your soul when it would have been easier to stay numb. And that took more courage than a lot of people will ever be able to muster. That relationships card is here to remind you that you are meant to be loved fully, not conditionally, not only when you're numb, not only when you perform, and not only when you're easy. You're meant to have relationships where your softness is honoured and not mocked, where your feelings are heard and not dismissed, where your sensitivity is seen as the strength that it is and not an inconvenience, where your truth is welcomed and not punished, where your boundaries are respected and not guilt-tripped, where love is reciprocal and not one-sided. You know, some of the relationships that fell away were genuinely holding you back from stepping into that version of yourself. And it doesn't mean that those people never mattered. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means you finally chose to stop sacrificing your whole self to keep them comfortable. And it's more than okay to love those people from afar. It's okay to grieve what was. And it's okay to miss them sometimes and still know, even when you miss them, that you made the right choice. And the relationships that are coming next, they are going to be so bright and blooming and nourishing. I'm getting like full of possibility, laughter, softness, honesty, and mutual respect. People who don't just like tolerate your sensitivity, but they actually treasure it like they're supposed to. And with the Magician and the Page of Wands, I'm getting like, you have no idea how powerful you already are. I keep hearing that. Like, this is big main character energy. This is asking, like, do you even know what you just unlocked, pal 2? You are amazing because you have just stepped into your initiation. Is something I'm getting, like, all the work that you've done, the healing, the choices, the leaving as needed, the unmasking too, the uncomfortable honesty, it has opened something inside you. I'm getting it's unleashed something. It's like you have activated this creative, spiritual, emotional power within yourself, and it cannot be put back into its box. Like, this is big sacral chakra awakening energy, big I am allowed to create a life that feels good kind of energy. And the Magician says here, like, you've always had the tools, you've always had the magic, it's intrinsic to you, you've always been capable, you just needed to believe that using these tools was even an option. And this feels like the moment where you stop waiting for permission or validation or a sign that it's like okay for you to start. You're not waiting for somebody to hand you a quest anymore, like you're an NPC in a game. You don't need somebody to come and approach you to activate you, is something I'm getting. Like, you are the one who gives yourself the quest now. You wake up and you say to yourself, what do I want to build? What do I want to explore today? What do I want to learn? What do I want to express? And you do it. You know, the Page of Wands, it's that kind of restless, excited, inner child fire type feeling, saying like, I'm ready. I'm getting ready to move, ready to try, ready to play, maybe ready to be seen. You are amazing because you're no longer just dreaming. You are bringing the fantasy into form. You know, the life you used to maybe only access through daydreams, it's like you are taking steps, even if it's tiny ones, to create it for real. And those small steps really matter. And something else I'm getting is like, you're amazing because you thrill people more than you realize. I'm getting like you inspire others just by existing as yourself. Like, you do things differently and you're starting things now that have never been done before, at least not in your lineage, your environment, your circle. And you're the one who's saying like, I know we've always done it this way, but I'm not doing it like that anymore. Like, I know I've always turned to this habit to survive, but I'm choosing something different now. I know fear used to make every decision for me, but now I'm letting curiosity drive. You don't have to know the whole path. The spark is enough. The wanting is enough. And you have that in abundance, pal too. With that Liberator card, which I love so much, I'm getting that you light the way for others. It's not just about healing yourself. It's one of the most powerful energies somebody can embody, and it's literally yours. Like, you are freeing yourself from old inherited beliefs about what you're allowed to be. You know, shame around your feelings or your body, your identity, your softness. You're freeing yourself from emotional repression and shutdown. You're freeing yourself from nervous system freeze and trauma-born patterns, or these outdated stories that say you're too much or too sensitive, or even that you're not enough. And in doing so, it's like you give everyone around you permission to question what they have accepted too. People might see you, for example, leave a job that kills your spirit, or they see you choose a sober life, or they see you come out, or they see you change paths, dress differently, set boundaries, say no, leave relationships, or pursue your creative passions. They see you rest without guilt, and something in them stirs. They think, you know, if they can do that, maybe I can do it too. So you are amazing because you are not just surviving your story, you are rewriting it, and you're making it easier for the people who come after you. You are the one who stops the trauma being passed forwards untouched. You're the one who turns and you look at that old devil energy in the eye and you say no more. That is holy work. That is powerful work. That is your hero's journey. And your inner child is so proud of you for that, pal too. You know, throughout the years, your insecurities have told you, like, you're too soft for this world, you're broken, you're behind, you're the problem. You will be unlovable if you show who you really are. But your cards and your soul say, like, you are soft and strong at the same time, and you are not broken. You are still healing, and you are not behind. You were surviving, and now you are creating. And you are not the problem. You were the one who saw the problem clearly, and you spoke out on it. So they tried to make you the problem, but you never were. You are deeply lovable exactly as you are, even while still healing, and you are not defined by your past. You are the one with the power to rewrite the story. Your tenderness is your power. Pal 2, you are so much more amazing than you think, and your inner child is looking at you and they're saying, that is my hero. That is what I'm getting for your reading, pal 2, and that is where I am going to leave you today, my loves. I really, really hope you enjoyed this reading. I just want to thank you so much for being here and for listening and for sharing your beautiful energy with me. If you enjoyed this reading and if you want to support the channel, the best ways to do that are super simple. You can like the video, you can comment, you can hype, share, sub. All of that genuinely helps a small creator like me more than you could even realize. I know these are heavy topics, but even something like dropping an emoji or telling me which pal you picked makes a huge difference in terms of the algorithm. So if you're on the fence, if you're a little bit shy, please just go for it. If you can, I will be really grateful. It just helps me know whether or not these readings are resonating for somebody, and it helps me keep doing what I love. Thank you again for spending your time with me. I adore you, pal 2, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Hi, pal 3 Collective. If you chose the Dog Tarot and you chose this Sun/Moon sticker and you chose pal 3, you are in the correct place. Welcome to your reading, friends. If you would like a full breakdown regarding everything this reading will entail, please check out my introduction. I go through absolutely everything there. I will also leave some details in the pinned comment below for your reference. I would recommend checking at least one of those out so you know what to expect from this reading today. But today's reading is titled The Truth, Why You Are So Lovable and Way More Amazing Than You Think. Your insecurities need a reality check. And just as a very brief overview to describe the vibe of this reading today, imagine me as Tarot Joe Goldberg, peeking around the metaphysical corner, seeing your potential, noticing you spiraling over things you don't need to worry about. And I'm looking at you like, that's okay, I can fix it. I can fix you. Not literally, please don't panic, but spiritually, that's the level of dramatic and delusional devotion I'm bringing to your confidence today. Or that's what I'm trying to do anyway. I am basically stalking your self-worth, like, babe, you don't even know how amazing you are, but don't worry, I'm going to tell you. I've got this. So we are going to identify an insecurity or wound. That's what we're going to be looking at with these first 3 cards. We're going to look at where it may have come from, and then we're going to move into the full I don't know her portion of the reading, and that's where we're going to be properly hyping you up and reminding you why you're so iconic and amazing. And we're going to give your insecurities the eviction notice they didn't even know was coming. So that's where the real magic starts, because we're going to be reminding you why you're so amazing and lovable and powerful and magical, way more than you realise even. So without hesitation, let's get started and have a look at the first 3 cards that we pulled for you. I'm just going to move your little sticker to one side so we can focus on the cards in front of us. Starting over here on the left, we have got the King of Pentacles reversed. We have got the 8 of Swords reversed. I know it looks like it's upright, but that is actually the reversal, because it's meant to be like this is what it would look like upright. So yeah, that is reversed. I got confused for a minute then. And we have got the Magician upright. Okay, pile 3, straight away. I just want to say, if you were torn at all between this pile and pile 1, that makes total sense. There is a little bit of an overlap in terms of themes, but the main difference between pile 1 and you guys is like there was some sense with pile 1 that they didn't really realise how powerful they were. And with your pile, I'm getting like, you do know how powerful you are, and that's exactly what terrifies you. Like, your wound isn't, I don't have any power, even if you have felt that way before. It's not really that. Your wound is more like, what would happen if I actually use it? You know, what happens if I let it out and it's not perfect, or it doesn't have the desired outcome? You know, what if I lose control of it? What if people see me and they see things that I don't want them to see, and they don't see what I want them to see? It's very like, I know there's this huge world-changing main character inside me, but I am absolutely not letting that version of me out until the conditions are just right, until they're perfect, until my eyeliner is even on both sides, and until I've rehearsed my speech 12 times and there is 0 chance for criticism. You know, with the King of Pentacles reversed, there feels like a pressure here to kind of like have it all together, is what I want to say. It's like your insecurity, or a part of it at least, is tied to how you view your stability and your competence. And yeah, like just your ability to, I guess, like have your shit together, have your life together, or appear that way. You might kind of feel like you're meant to be like the reliable one, the solid one, the one that people can be proud of, the one who makes the sensible choices and has good judgment, or who does like the right thing. But internally, it can kind of feel like chaos. It can feel like you are constantly walking on a tightrope, afraid that if you loosen your grip even slightly, everything will fall apart and you'll be like exposed as someone who, you know, never really knew what they were doing in the first place. A lot of this feels like it could stem from some criticism and nitpicking when you were growing up. And I'm getting this image of somebody as a child. It doesn't have to be, it's literally this example for you. This is just like a tangible image that I'm trying to describe, but I'm getting like a child sitting and doing their homework. So maybe this is you and you're like really proud of an English essay that you've just wrote because you really enjoy English, or some other project that you've poured your heart and soul into. And instead of hearing from one of your caregivers like, wow, this is brilliant, you had a parent or an authority figure standing over your shoulder, hovering there and just picking out the mistakes, like saying, oh, you missed a comma there, or that spelt wrong, or why don't you do it like this instead? And it's not that the feedback is inherently bad or like this person is trying to be evil, but when praise is withheld and the focus is just permanently on what's wrong, it kind of trains your nervous system to associate being seen with always being corrected. So now it's like whenever you do something, it can almost feel like there's this invisible person standing behind you with a red pen, ready to like circle and point out your mistakes in bright ink. So as an adult, you know, this might look like struggling to start anything unless you feel like it will be absolutely perfect from the get-go. If you are a writer, let's say if we use that English example, it might feel like you are not allowed to have a messy, rough draft. It's like the moment you start writing, it has to be good enough to publish. You know, if you put out content and you notice one tiny little editing mistake, or you mispronounce a word, or the lighting's not quite right, you might spiral and feel like you need to just like take the whole thing down. You don't fully allow yourself to just be human in a way. There's kind of this weight of like, everything I do is a performance that I could be judged for at any moment. So then the standards become impossibly high because it feels like you've always got this person at your back picking apart your mistakes. This can also show up fiercely around your appearance is something that I'm getting, and this might not relate to everybody, but you may have struggled with things like body image or body dysmorphia, or simply just like an intense inner critic. Maybe you're somebody who, if somebody takes a picture of you, you zoom in on every single photo of yourself, you nitpick every angle, every shadow, every pore on your face, every tiny detail that looks off, and your brain looks at it and goes like, I look terrible here, or this is ruined is something I'm hearing. Oh, that ruins it. Like, oh, I have a spot in this picture, so that ruins the whole thing. You might hate being photographed because you know you'll end up dissecting the image afterwards, or you might want to like rush to delete any unflattering picture that somebody tags you in. You might find yourself also like apologizing for how you look before anyone has even said anything. So maybe you go into work and you're like, oh, sorry, I look really rough today, or, you know, sorry, I've not got any makeup on, or sorry, my hair is a mess, as if you need to preempt criticism just in case it comes. A lot of you were probably made to feel very watched and very judged or very like wrong in your natural state when you were younger. So now it's like you kind of police yourself so that nobody else does it first is something I'm getting. And underneath all of this, it's this huge fear of being seen as imperfect or messy or unfinished or not enough. The King of Pentacles reversed is like trying to be the stable, successful, composed, admirable person, and simultaneously living with this constant dread that like you're secretly not qualified, or you're not ready, or you're not allowed to claim that throne. There's also something coming through very strongly about being all or nothing, and some element of like hyper control here. There's something about you saying like, if I'm not doing it perfectly, what's the point in doing it at all? So this could be lots of different things, but one example I'm getting, if you are trying to like eat healthily or something like that, sometimes instead of moderation, you might kind of have a binge and then restrict cycle. Or it could be you say something to yourself like, oh, well, I've already messed up my diet today by eating something I didn't plan to eat, so I'll start again on Monday. Or like, if I can't do the full routine, I won't do any of it. Some of you might struggle to keep up habits because you expect yourself to be 1000% perfect all of the time. It always has to be like the perfect timing, the perfect mood, the perfect environment. If anything feels off, your brain labels the whole attempt as a failure. You're probably somebody who like buys loads of nice like clothes or even like journals and stickers, and then you never end up using them because it has to be like the perfect time. You don't feel like you're worthy of wearing those clothes or using those stickers unless things are absolutely perfect. It's something like that. You're also incredibly aware of how you are perceived. Before you bring up a concern with somebody, whether it's in a friendship or a relationship or a work setting, you might not just think about what you want to say, but it's like you will run through a whole imaginary script of what you think the other person will say and how they might respond, and whether you will look unreasonable or dramatic or difficult or ungrateful. And it's like you tailor and kind of edit your honesty before it even really leaves your mouth, because it's like you're constantly managing your own image, trying not to step out of line. It's like you're always slightly outside of yourself, looking back at you from the other person's perspective, and it can be exhausting. And you know, that control, it can show up in those more literal ways, you know, like we said, controlling what you eat, what goes into your body, controlling your schedule, controlling the narrative of how people see you. If someone gets the wrong idea about you, it could feel almost unbearable to you to just let them think that. It's like you immediately want to correct or clarify or explain or fix it because their perception almost feels like a threat. There's this strange loop where you don't want the wrong story to exist about you, but at the same time, you're not giving yourself the permission to be a human who sometimes gets misunderstood. And this doesn't just turn inwards, you know, your standards could extend outwards too. You might notice that you're someone who feels secondhand embarrassment very easily. You could pick up icks very easily in romantic situations, or you could notice that like tiny things about other people can really bother you. Sometimes a little thing will suddenly make you like, oh no, I can't see that person in the same way anymore. And then sometimes you judge yourself for being hypercritical of that person. And sometimes, yes, you know, that can be intuition or genuine incompatibility, but sometimes it's your avoidance, maybe for some of you, maybe that's not for all of you, but sometimes some of you could be avoidant or anxious avoidant in terms of your attachment, and sometimes it's your fear of being seen reflected back at you. It's like you're cringing on behalf of somebody else because you're terrified of ever being that visible, that unpolished, or that exposed yourself. And on the flip side to that, some of you could kind of be like almost the opposite. You know, if you do struggle with like intense people pleasing, especially, you may also downplay your own standards and maybe accept less effort than you deserve because you feel like nobody will ever be able to match the way that you show up. And so you might think like, I am asking too much, or no one else will ever care as much as I do. And so you might settle for a mediocre effort whilst like holding your own self to this inhuman level of responsibility. You assume no one could ever even meet you where you are, so you either push people away before they get close enough to try, or you hang on to people who don't really try at all because you just don't expect to be matched in that sense. The Eight of Swords reverse shows that you've spent a long time living inside a mental prison made of rules and expectations that you never consciously chose. These are like the shoulds that run in the background. I should look like this, I should be doing this or be this far along, I should be more put together, I should be more successful, I should never mess up, I should never need help, I should just know how to do this. And a lot of these rules come from external sources, you know, maybe it's strict parents, maybe it's cultural or religious norms, it could be gender roles, beauty standards, or simply being raised by someone who wanted to tightly control how you appeared to the world. Maybe someone who regulated what you wore, how loudly you spoke, who you were friends with, who you dated, how you expressed your emotions, what career you chose. Maybe the message was, this is how someone like you is supposed to behave, dress, live, love. If you did anything outside of that script, it could have been met with disapproval or shame or punishment. So maybe you learned very quickly that being yourself was risky and compliance was safety. And eventually this became internal. You no longer need that person to tell you what's wrong because their voice becomes your voice. You might live like a prisoner in your own life, kind of obeying rules that don't actually align with who you are, but those bars feel real because they've been there for so long. But Eight of Swords reversed, it's that moment where you're like, oh, wait, like who actually wrote this rule book and do I even agree with any of it? It's the realization that a lot of your fear was inherited, not deliberately chosen. And a lot of your shame was manufactured, not truth. And a lot of your standards are actually just other people's control mechanisms dressed up as morality, respectability, or common sense. The funny thing about this card reversed is that it shows you gradually like stepping out of that prison, but it's in a slightly wobbly and awkward way at times. Like freedom feels strange at first, especially if you've always done what you're told and suddenly you realize you don't have to. Your body might still hesitate. Your mind might still say like, are you sure we're allowed to do that? Might feel unnatural at first, but something in you is getting louder than the fear. There's this deeper voice that's saying like, I think I'm allowed to write my own rules now. And that's fucking huge, pile 3. But the twist that makes your pile so powerful and kind of painful too is that your soul is the magician. You know, you are naturally creative, resourceful, capable, intuitive, and influential as well. You know, you've always had the tools, you've always had the it factor, the magic potion. You were always meant to bring things into reality, whether it's ideas or art or projects or lifestyles or new ways of doing things. You know, you're the kind of person who can look at what they have and think like, okay, if this is what I've got, I'll make something good with it. But your environment made you feel like you weren't allowed to trust that. You might have felt like you were shamed for wanting more or punished for stepping outside of the script. You know, maybe dismissed when you showed ambition, or made to feel like too much when you leaned into your own natural leadership or your creativity or your visibility. So instead of maybe owning your magician energy, you might have learnt to dim it. Maybe you learnt to delay your own beginnings, to tell yourself you needed more time, more certifications, more credentials, more readiness. You kept telling yourself, like, tomorrow, like, maybe you were waiting for a more impressive status, a better body before you're allowed to act. But the Magician upright appearing in your shadow section is like your higher self standing there saying, everything you need is already in your hands, and it always has been. The only thing standing in your way is the belief that you are not ready or you are not allowed. And honestly, Pile 3, like, I truly see so much of myself in you, in this pile. And I will give, like, YouTube as an example. Like, when I first started, I had this belief that everything had to be perfect or it wasn't worth posting. You know, the lighting had to be perfect, the reading had to be perfect, the editing had to be perfect, I had to be perfect. I deleted things so many times. And very quickly, very quickly, I had to just, like, get over that it wasn't going to be perfect, because I'd never, like, before I started YouTube, I'd never, like, made or edited a video ever before, really. Apart from, like, when I was a kid, a teenager, like, messing around with my phone camera. I'd never done anything like this before, so I didn't know anything. And, like, this is never going to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be. You know, I've made editing mistakes, I've mispronounced words, I've said things completely wrong because my brain has glitched. I've uploaded readings where later I've looked back at them and I've thought, oh my god, like, why did I say it like that? That's not what I meant. And yet, I didn't get hated for it, like, not in the catastrophic way that my brain predicted, at least. And that's the thing, like, I said this in the intro of the reading, I genuinely expected to get hated so much more than I did. And it will be the exact same for you. Like, you are infinitely harsher on yourself than anyone else ever could be. The things you think people will judge you for, most people don't even notice. And yes, of course, there are always people who will hate or nitpick, and that is their wound, not yours. You know, I've had people who leave comments telling me, like, you're interpreting the cards wrong, you're wrong, you did this bad, blah blah blah. And I'm not talking about constructive criticism. Like, plenty of my friends who do tarot and, like, you guys have given me constructive criticism, and I like to think I've been quite receptive to that. But I'm talking about people who are deliberately unkind and who only want to point out the bad things. And, you know, when I've clicked that person's profile, I'm expecting this tarot expert. I'm thinking, okay, well, if I've got it wrong, like, maybe I can learn something from this person. And what I always find is a faceless account with no content at all. And that's when it hits me, like, people who criticize from the shadows usually do so because they have perfectionism wounds that they are projecting. So I don't take it personally anymore. And honestly, like, if you've ever looked at someone's content or their makeup or their writing or their career and thought, like, I could do that, not from a place of arrogance, but from a place of, like, yeah, like, I could put my own spin on that, or I think I could do a great job at that too, then yeah, you're probably right. Like, why don't you, Pal 3? Like, if you think you can do something just as well, or even better, it's probably because you actually can. So go and do it. Like, stop talking yourself out of it. You are just as qualified as anyone else who started before you. There is also something about a wound directly attached to the material. And again, I am getting something about body image or status or achievement. You may have gone through phases of intense control over your own body or appearance. This could be things like restricting food, obsessing over weight, chasing a very specific aesthetic, or feeling like your value increased when you shrank yourself in some way. And I don't want to gaslight you guys and say that you're imagining the way that society treats different bodies differently. I know that that's a real thing. And, you know, I'm somebody who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. That wasn't easy in terms of body image. And then current trends are reviving, and there's things like the heroin chic trend and Ozempic and things like that, without getting into a discussion about all of that. There's a lot of brutal and very toxic standards when it comes to bodies. And the problem is not you noticing that people might treat you differently when you look a certain way. The problem is what your insecurity did with that information. You know, at some point that wound might have whispered to you and said, like, if I can just get back to that body or that size or that version of me, I'll have my power back, or I'll wear that outfit when I'm skinny, or I'll start living my life when I look like this. And the same thing can show up with our relationship to career, money, relationships, milestones, you know, when we say like, when I have that job, when I earn that amount, when I get married, when I move out, when I have kids, when I buy the house, whatever it is, then I'll finally be allowed to feel worthy. Then I'll be a real adult. Then I'll be someone who people respect. But what happens is you hit some of those goals and there's still this hollow feeling and the excitement wears off and you realize you don't feel fundamentally more complete. And that is not you failing, that's your soul saying, you know, these things were never meant to give me worth. They were just meant to hold it. I was always meant to define them, not the other way around. You're starting to see through this illusion that your worth is conditional and it's based on your productivity or your appearance or your timeline. And it can feel disorientating that your old framework for success and being enough starts to crumble. But honestly, that is like your freedom opening up. And one thing I want you to know, Pal 3, is that you're allowed to get it wrong. Like, something that's really strong in your energy is this realization that sometimes you are allowed to be wrong. Like, you are allowed to make mistakes and not be exiled for it. You're allowed to wear something that doesn't flatter you and still deserve compliments and love. You're allowed to try things and then change your mind. You are allowed to take a risk and have it not go perfectly. You're allowed to exist as a human being, not a curated character. For some reason, I'm like thinking of the song Grown Woman by Beyonce. I can't remember what the lyrics are, but I think one of them is something like, I can be wrong if I want. It is that like grown woman, grown man energy. It's that feeling of like, I can live how I want, I can get things wrong and still be okay, I can be messy and still be worthy. You are moving away from this mentality of like, if I don't get it right the first time, there's no point in trying, and into like, I'm allowed to be learning, I'm allowed to be in progress, a work in progress, and I'm allowed to still be magic at the same time as that. So if we boil all of this down, like, your wound is that you were made to feel like you must be perfect to be safe, so now you're terrified of being seen imperfectly. You were made to feel like your worth depends on your performance, your status, your appearance, your usefulness, so now you over control yourself in your life. You internalize these rules that you never agreed to and live like a prisoner in a reality that other people scripted for you. Well, you were born a magician, you know, creative, capable, powerful, but you convince yourself you're not allowed to claim that identity until you meet these impossible standards. You believed you weren't ready because no one ever showed you that readiness is something you build by starting. You believed your dreams were unrealistic because the people around you lacked their own imagination, not because you lacked potential. You believed you had to be flawless to be worthy because your humanity was criticized instead of cherished. And now that cage is cracking open, the blindfold is slipping here, the rules are being questioned. That magician in you is like waking up and looking around and going, hang on, like, I'm allowed to live my life my way. You are not who this wound told you you are. You are who the magician knows that you are. So we're going to look at who that person is and why they're so amazing. So I'm just going to put these 3 cards to one side and let's have a look at your next ones, Pile 3. So Pile 3, this is the part of the reading where we talk about why you are actually incredible, way more incredible than what you realize, and why your brain has been moving mad about you for absolutely no reason. So let's have a look at what we pulled for you. So we have got strength. Oh my god, that's beautiful. Clarifying strength. We have got the 5 of Swords. We have got the Page of Pentacles. And clarifying the Page of Pentacles is the 5 of Cups reversed. And we have got the Page of Cups. And clarifying the Page of Cups is the 3 of Cups. And from the Modern Witch spiritual deck, we have got spirituality. And from the Archetypes Oracle, we have got child nature, light attributes, friendships with animals, communication with nature spirits. Shadow attribute is tendency to abuse animals, people, and the environment. First of all, Pile 3, obviously I didn't say this at the beginning, but you chose the Dog Tarot and you chose the Sun/Moon sticker, which already tells me a lot, to be honest. Like, a lot of you could be massive animal people, you could have an affinity to dogs specifically, you could be the kind of person where your pets are your actual children, that's how it feels. You could be someone who donates to animal charities or who feeds the local wildlife or advocates for wildlife, or you just feel way more at home out on a walk in nature than you do in a busy shopping centre or something. There is something here about your spirit at its core being very at one with nature, with animals and with the land and with the sky, maybe much more than you realise. There's a lot of green energy coming through here. Maybe green is one of your favourite colours. And then obviously we have that sun and that moon, which represents, you know what I'm going to say, like duality. I always talk about it in these readings. And it's screaming to me. You are screaming to me. Not literally, but I'm hearing you saying, like, I am both. Like, I'm not just one thing. I'm not meant to live in extremes. I can integrate all of it is something that I'm getting. And it's a part of why you are amazing. That's a really big part of why you're so amazing, actually, because your life path is a lot about holding two truths at once. You know, you are deeply spiritual and you're human. You are grounded and you are dreamy. You are soft and you are strong. You are allowed to believe in angels and still want a nice car. Like, you are allowed to meditate and still care about your skincare. You're allowed to work on your inner child and still want your crush to text you back a little bit. You're not a hypocrite for being both. You are a full, nuanced, multifaceted human being, and that is beautiful. And that's where your cards get really interesting, pile 3, because with that strength and with the 5 of Swords, your strength, pile 3, it's not necessarily loud, it's not the loudest in the room, and it's not messy. You know, it's not the type of strength where you have to like stand up on the table and shout over everyone and be like, I'm right. It's that quiet, grounded strength of somebody who could go to war if they very well wanted to, but chooses not to unless there is no other option. You are the sort of person who, let's be honest, pal 3, you could destroy someone in an instant in an argument, like, because you notice everything. You can clock people's weak spots. You see straight through bullshit. You see people's insecurities. You could go blow for blow, toe to toe if you wanted to, but you don't because you actually have a conscience. And I feel like you've learned that the hard way. With the 5 of Swords, there is this energy of like you experiencing conflict you didn't ask for, maybe people projecting onto you, people sometimes like holding you to higher standards than everyone else, or, you know, moments where maybe you did react or you cracked and then you felt really bad about it afterwards. Some of you could have grown up with this label of like being the good one, you know, the responsible one, the golden child, or the quiet one, the person who doesn't step a foot out of line. So it's like when you did slip up, when you snapped, or when you laughed a little bit too loudly, or you said or did something that was out of character, it's almost like you got punished 10 times harder than people around you. You know, we gave this example in one of my other readings, but it was something about like, yeah, people holding you to higher standards. So like if the teacher sees you as like the golden child or the teacher's pet, if you speak out of turn, you could be really, really harshly punished. But the kid who throws tantrums every single lesson and who throws chairs across the room, they can do the same thing. And the repercussions aren't as harsh for that person. Like, you get detention for speaking out, but they can throw a chair across the room and nothing, like no reaction. It's like when they kicked off, everyone just sighed and everyone was like, oh, that's just them, like just ignore them. But when you even like breathed wrong, it was suddenly a scandal. And that's exhausting. And it created this weird perfectionism where you felt like you always had to be on, like always composed, always in control, always the one holding it together. But your cards are saying like you're amazing because you started to realize you don't need to manage everyone's perceptions anymore. You're learning to do that. I'm getting like the Mel Robbins thing, like the let them theory. You're learning to let them. If people want to misunderstand you, let them. If someone wants to think you're rude, difficult, boring, too much, not enough, let them. Your strength now isn't in convincing everyone that you're a good person. You know you are. It's in knowing you're good, even when someone out there has built a whole fictional version of you in their head. You are starting to understand that trying to be perfect for everyone is not only impossible, but it's actually a prison. And you are finally walking yourself out of that cell. You still feel the trigger sometimes, though. You still feel the sting of like, oh, they've got me so wrong. But instead of spiraling or jumping to fix things or rewrite things to please them, you're more and more able to say these days, okay, that's what they think. That doesn't mean it's true, and it definitely doesn't mean I have to live my life smaller to make them comfortable. And that kind of restraint, that mix of empathy and boundaries, That is real strength. With the Page of Pentacles and with the Five of Cups reversed, this combination is just so soft and so beautiful. The Page of Pentacles is you as a beginner. It's you as a student, you as someone who is willing to try and do the thing, even if it's not the finished product. And the Five of Cups reversed, it's you moving out of regret and into healing. You are amazing, Pal 3, because you are slowly forgiving yourself. You're forgiving yourself for the times that you didn't start because you were terrified of not being perfect, or you were scared you couldn't live up to your own potential or high expectations, for the times you sabotage your own opportunities because you thought you weren't ready, for the times you let fear of judgment keep you in a box that never really fit you. You grew up thinking you had to be like fully qualified, fully polished, flawless, having it all together before you were even allowed to try. But you're realizing now that literally everything in life starts with a messy first draft. I know that is so difficult for perfectionists to accept, but it's the truth. Like, every business starts as just a little baby idea. Every relationship starts with that one awkward first date. Every creative project starts as like a clunky, slightly cringy attempt. You're amazing because you are finally letting yourself be the apprentice. People think like mastery is the goal, but you've been practicing mastery since forever. You've been practicing perfection since forever. Now it's time for you to learn to be the apprentice. This is a non-linear journey, and that will get you to like another level of mastery. It's like you're letting yourself be new, letting yourself experiment, letting yourself plant seeds. Even if you don't know exactly what kind of tree the seeds are going to grow into, you're also learning that your, quote, failed attempts were never actually failures. They were like skill gathering missions. You know, times when something didn't work out the way you thought, but you came away with new knowledge, new perspective, this sense of resilience, or just experience that you could build on. This is you moving from that mentality of like, you know, if I mess up once, it's ruined and I have to start all over again, to, okay, you know, that didn't go perfectly, but what did I learn? What can I keep from that? And what can I do differently next time? It's a level of reflection, and it's replacing that all or nothing mentality with something that's sustainable and genuinely powerful. And there's this extra layer with you about like spirituality versus material things. It's like you're starting to realize you're allowed to want stability and nice things and also be deeply spiritual. You know, you can be the person who like talks to their spirit guides and also wants to buy themselves a perfume that they've been eyeing for months. You can believe in past lives and still want like a cozy home and a reliable income, or a partner to cuddle on the sofa with. You know, you're not less evolved because you like pretty things, good food, or, you know, a car that doesn't break down every 5 minutes, as one example. And you're not shallow for wanting love. Wanting romance isn't embarrassing. Wanting connection isn't embarrassing. Accepting the bare minimum from someone, yes, that can be embarrassing, but you wanting a loving, affirming, high quality relationship one day, that is completely normal, completely human, and completely allowed. Like, it's like you're finding that balance between, you know, nothing matters, I'll just consume anything mindlessly, and I have to be morally perfect in every decision or I'm a bad person. It's like sometimes you could beat yourself up for being a spiritual person who sometimes doesn't feel spiritual enough. Like, maybe you don't get a chance to invest in your practices all the time, or maybe sometimes you feel like, oh, but like I, you know, indulge in these less spiritual things. Like, I do want material security, or sometimes I do follow a random TikTok trend or something like that, and that's okay. Like, you know, people always say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, but you are doing your best and you care. That's the main thing. You are thoughtful and you're also learning. Like, you're also not pretending to be like above humanity. You're just trying to move through it as kindly and as consciously as you can, and that makes you incredible. You know, some of you feel like I should be above this, but yes, we are spiritual beings, but we were also given like a human vessel to experience being a human and to enjoy that and everything that comes with that. It's not a flaw. Our soul chose to incarnate in this human vessel for a reason. So why not enjoy it? You know, buy the nice perfume, buy the nice car, wanting the nice house, whatever. Doesn't make you less spiritual or less evolved. I feel like you're also learning that you don't have to like rehearse and edit every single sentence before you speak, because some of you guys could have struggled with that. It's like you're allowing yourself to just talk, to just say what you mean in the moment without dragging yourself over hot coals afterwards for not getting your point across completely perfectly. You're learning to like use your voice without reprimanding yourself for having one, and to let that voice actually be yours and not some like carefully curated version based on what you think people want from you. For some of you, that literally looks like speaking up more about the things your soul actually cares about, you know, whether it's spirituality, healing, taboo topics, stuff that really lights you up. And some of you might even be watching this like, oh, hang on, Nosy Witch literally said that she had no clue what she was doing at first, and she's out here doing it. Like, I could do that. I could be a reader. I could make content. I could talk about the things I care about too. And honestly, yes, you could. And maybe you could do it better than me, and maybe you should. And maybe you're finally going to let yourself try. You know, it doesn't have to be tarot specifically. It might be, but it could be for any form of self-expression, any kind of creative or spiritual work. It could be public speaking, advocacy, storytelling. You are a powerful creator and a powerful manifester, and that's why you're drawn to these things in the first place. It's like you've been trained to sort of over-edit yourself or self-flagellate so that people don't take you the wrong way. Maybe you feel like the entire internet is going to show up with pitchforks, but they won't. And if someone does come at you sideways, if this is about like putting content out and being worried about what people will think, that's when you have to ask yourself, would I actually want their life? Like, do I want to be like this person? Because never in my life ever have I read a nasty, unnecessarily hostile comment and thought, wow, I aspire to be this person. Constructive feedback, that's different. I love that. I do take that on board. And I've changed some of the way I approach things because of constructive feedback I've had already. Like, I'm always trying to improve my work because I care about you guys and I care about what I'm creating. But someone being mean for the sake of it, that says everything about them and nothing about me. And the same goes for you. If you struggle with rejection sensitivity or the fear of putting yourself out there, you are so unbelievably brave for even considering doing the thing anyway. Your strength is in knowing the difference between a genuine guidance and just pointless cruelty, and choosing again and again to follow what your heart loves rather than what your fear imagines. I love this Page of Cups and the Three of Cups because that is about your heart opening again and people loving you for it. This is such a stunning, like, heart-opening glow-up moment for you guys. You know, this is your inner child peeking out from behind the curtain, saying, like, are we allowed to feel things again? Could we try this? Or can we say yes without overthinking it for 12 business days? And the Three of Cups answers with this warm, welcoming, open-armed energy of community and friendship. This is like soul family and celebration. You know, people who see you and who love you and support you and don't require a single ounce of perfection from you. This is the part of your journey where you start living from your heart again instead of from fear or performance or hyper-control. What makes you so amazing, Pal 3, is that you are finally, even if it's gently, even if it's nervously, starting to say yes to life. Yes to invitations, yes to dates, yes to friendships, yes to creative collaborations, yes to opportunities that the old version of you would have like immediately talked yourself out of. You know, instead of spiraling into, I'm not ready, I'm not qualified, I'll probably embarrass myself, someone will judge me, you are learning to pause and check in with your intuition and go, do you know what? This actually feels right in my gut. Let's just see what happens. And every single time you do this, you prove to yourself again and again that you are far more competent, charming, lovable, emotionally intelligent, magnetic than your inner critic ever let you believe. Things work out for you, Pal 3. People respond well. You exceed your own expectations. You surprise yourself in the best way when you go for it and when you try. This shift might be showing up in really tangible ways too. You know, maybe you're choosing to go out with your friends, even on those nights where you've got dressed and you feel like you don't look perfect. Maybe you're accepting a speaking opportunity or a creative project even if your voice shakes. Maybe you're finally posting that art or writing or video or just a selfie or some kind of creative piece that's been sitting in your drafts for months. Maybe you're going on a date with someone who feels kind and grounded, someone who sees you. Even if the idea of like being perceived makes your stomach flip, you are discovering that life goes so much better when you follow your heart, rather than like your fear of optics or other people's approval. You're like essentially remembering that you are meant to feel your life, not curate it into something that's like sterile and acceptable. And this is the part that I really want you guys to hear. People are drawn to your softness. You know, people adore the parts of you that you thought you had to hide. People feel safe around you because you're sincere, when you're emotionally honest. They feel safe around you because of your intuition, because you're funny in this like quietly chaotic, hilarious kind of way, and because you listen deeply and you actually care. The people who are meant for you, your friends, your lovers, your collaborators, your soul fam, they do not want this like polished avatar version of you. They don't want like the AI version, the edited version. They want the real human being behind the scenes. They want your messy laugh and your awkward stories. They want your rants, your like niche hyperfixations. They want your impulsive ideas. They want that rawness, that tenderness, the thing that you always assumed was like too much. It was never too much. It was part of the magic. And that spirituality oracle card is coming through, and it's this sort of soft but unmistakable nudge from your guides. And it's saying like, hey, like you do realize, Path 3, you're not walking any of this alone, right? Even in the moments where you felt kind of clumsy or unsure or disconnected or like not spiritual enough, you've actually been incredibly tapped in. You are someone who feels energy shifts long before there's any logical reason for it, and you've probably always done this. You just tend to like know when something is off, not because you're paranoid, but because your intuition is sharp, it's consistent, and it's always accurate. You could get repeating numbers, feathers, animals crossing your path at like the exact right moment. You could get dreams that mean something, gut feelings that turn out to be right, creative downloads that arrive like out of nowhere. It's like you read between the lines without trying. You absorb meaning from symbols and signs and conversations, from imagery. The universe speaks to you in ways you understand without needing to force it or be told anything. The only thing that's ever made you doubt yourself is that harsh inner critic whispering to you like, oh, but what if I'm wrong? What if I'm imagining it? What if I sound stupid? But your cards are saying the exact opposite. You are not delusional, you are connected. And you've always been connected since you were a child. You know, you're someone whose intuition naturally picks up on subtle realms. You're always in conversation with spirit is something I'm getting, whether you're consciously like practicing spirituality or not. It's not something you turn on, it's just something you naturally are. It is embedded in the way you move through the world. And with that child nature archetype, you know, your soul is soft, it's pure, it's instinctive, and it's wired for kindness. This archetype card is so deeply you that it's almost funny. It speaks to the part of your spirit that has always felt at home with nature, or animals, or trees, or the sky, oceans, the moon, the smell of rain, the sound of birds, the presence of your pets. It's that natural innocence that you've had since you were very young, you know, the part of you that understood the language of the earth before you ever understood the language of humans. The light attribute here highlights the purity of your heart, you know, your gentleness, your compassion, your instinctive kindness, your ability to sense truth through feeling, not logic. And then we have that shadow side, which is not calling you harmful ever. Instead, it's calling out a fear that you've carried for years, that if you are not perfectly controlled, you might accidentally hurt someone, that if you slip, you will be judged as bad, that if you are not constantly careful, you'll be misunderstood, that if you don't hold yourself to impossible moral standards, you'll somehow disappoint the world. But the truth is, and it's a pretty big truth, Pal 3, you care far too deeply to ever be careless. You know that. You are so much kinder to others than you are to yourself. The person you police or punish or criticize and scrutinize the most is you. But you are not dangerous. You are not irresponsible. You are not chaotic in the way that you fear. If anything, you are like overly conscientious. You know, the type who apologizes for things that aren't even your fault or worries about hurting someone's feelings before you even speak. That's not the trait of someone who causes harm. That's the trait of someone whose heart is far too gentle for this world. But that's what makes you amazing, though. You know, despite the pressure, you know, the perfectionism, the conditioning, the expectations, the criticism, your spirit has stayed soft and caring. Your compassion survived. Your innocence is still intact. Your heart never hardened, even when the world tried to make you like toughen up. You are a child of nature, a child of spirit. You were built from gentleness, and your softness is not only allowed, but it's actually divine. So if your insecurities are lying to you, when your insecurities are saying like, if you're not perfect, you don't deserve to try, if you make a mistake, you will lose love, if you care about material things or romance, you're not spiritual enough, if you show who you really are, people will judge you. Your cards are saying like, you are loved because you're human, not in spite of it. You are allowed to want nice things and still be profoundly spiritual. You are allowed to want love and connection without feeling like that's embarrassing. You are allowed to be a beginner and still be powerful. You are not the strict voice in your head. You are not this perfectionist rulebook that you inherited, but you are the heart underneath it. You're that curious student You are that spiritual, animal-loving, slightly feral earth angel who is finally giving themselves permission to live, and you are doing an incredible job already. So that is what I'm getting for your reading, pile 3, and that is where I'm going to leave you today, my loves. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, and for sharing your beautiful energy with me. I appreciate it more than you know. If you enjoyed this reading and if you want to support the channel, the best ways to do that are super simple. You can like the video, leave a comment, hype, share, subscribe. All of that genuinely helps a small creator like me more than you realise. You know, if you're shy, even dropping an emoji or telling me which pile you picked does make a huge difference in terms of the algorithm. So if you're on the fence, please do it if you can. I'd be really grateful. It just lets me keep doing what I love. With that said, thank you for spending this time with me. I adore you guys. Take care, pile 3, and I will see you in the next one. Hi, Pile 4 Collective. If you chose the Midnight City Tarot and you chose the Pyjamas sticker and you chose Pile 4, you are in the correct place. Welcome to your reading, friends. If you would like a full breakdown regarding everything this reading will entail, please check out my introduction. I go through absolutely everything there. I will also leave some details in the pinned comment below for your reference. I would recommend checking at least one of those out so you know what to expect from this reading today. But today's reading is titled The Truth. Why you are so lovable and way more amazing than you think. Your insecurities need a reality check. So just as a very brief overview to describe the vibe of this reading, imagine me as Tarot Joe Goldberg peeking around the metaphysical corner, seeing your potential, noticing you spiraling over things you don't need to worry about, and I'm looking at you and I'm like, it's okay, I can fix it. I can fix you. Not literally, don't panic, but spiritually, that's the level of dramatic delusional devotion I am bringing to your confidence today. That's what I'm trying to do. I am basically stalking your self-worth like, babe, you don't even know how amazing you are yet, but don't worry, I'll tell you. I've got this. So we are starting off this reading. These first few cards, we are identifying the insecurity or wound. We're going to look at where it may have come from, and then we're going to move into the full I don't know hair portion of the reading. That's the part where we properly hype you up, remind you why you're iconic, and give your insecurities the eviction notice they didn't even know was coming. So that's where the real magic starts, because we're going to be giving you the truth. And that truth is that you're far more amazing, lovable, powerful, and magical than you even realise. So without hesitation, let's get started and have a look at the first 3 cards we pulled for you. I'm going to pop your pyjamas to one side for now. Oh, that sounded, I meant the sticker, not your actual pyjamas, pal. Your girl could dream. Anyway, let's have a look at the first few cards. So over here on the left, we have got the 6 of Cups. We have got the 2 of Coins, the 2 of Pentacles. And we have got Judgment reversed. Oh, powerful. This energy feels so tender and so like, I mean, all the piles are complicated and nuanced in their own way, but this is like so quietly complicated. You know, your wound isn't necessarily loud or obvious at first glance. It's not like all chaos and explosions over here, but it's this deep, nostalgic kind of ache is what I want to say. Like, it's wrapped up in who you used to be, who other people decided you were, and who you are becoming, and the tension of trying to honor all of that at once without, quote, letting anyone down. There's this insecurity around letting go of something you've been clinging to, you know, a version of you, a relationship dynamic, a job, a story about your life, because facing the truth of what's changing would feel like too much of a risk. So part of you hides from your true self, from this call, from the inner knowing that is telling you, like, you're different now, and that's okay. With the 6 of Cups, there's such a strong theme of, like, shared history and emotional loyalty here. So for some of you, you might be holding on to, like, people, places, careers, communities, or identities, not because they still fit, but because they were once important to you. It's that feeling of like, oh, we've been through so much, how could I walk away? You might tell yourself along with that, you might say like, this is fine, I don't really need anything to change, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, it's not that bad, I don't need to fully express this part of me. You know, as one example, this can show up in staying in relationship dynamics that are based more on shared memories than a shared future. This could be a friendship where you don't really connect anymore, but you feel guilty even imagining distance because, you know, oh, they were there for me back then. Or this could be a job you've outgrown, but you think, you know, I studied for so long, this company, they put me through training, and, you know, my colleagues are really lovely, I can't just leave. Or a relationship where you find yourself thinking like, oh, we had some really good times, you know, it wasn't always bad, even though right now you feel mostly drained in that situation. And it's like there's always a but. Oh, like we argued, but then they did something kind the next day. And that but is the thing that kind of makes it harder for you to trust yourself when you feel called to step away. A big part of this wound is that nostalgia can be a little bit of a trickster. And I'm not saying that you're imagining the good moments, like they were real, but our brains are sort of wired to smooth the edges of painful memories. And, you know, sometimes we romanticize the then, like back then, especially when our present feels a little bit uncertain. You know, psychologically, memory is reconstructive. It's not a perfect recording. Every time we revisit something, our mind sort of fills in the gaps with feelings and assumptions and biases. And over time, that can mean that we end up remembering more of the warmth or the like shared jokes or that idea of like, oh, we were so close or so aligned back then, far more clearly than maybe the loneliness, the resentment, or how small we might have felt. And it's not you being delusional. That is just how human memory sometimes works. So when you're weighing up whether something is still right for you, the scales are often tipped in favour of the past, and your insecurity whispers like, oh, what if I'm overreacting? You know, what if it wasn't that bad? What if I'll regret this? There's also this layer surrounding other people's memories of you that might play a part. It's like the way someone else has decided that you are or you used to be. There's some sense of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like you might feel weirdly disloyal for not matching the story they tell about you in their head anymore. Almost like you're saying, or your insecurity is saying more so, like, if I change, I'm betraying what they invested in me. Or if I move differently now, I'm proving them right when they say that I've changed. One big example I'm getting, it doesn't have to be this one for you, but I am thinking of like parents. You know, if we think of when a kid grows into a teenager and then they grow into an adult, a healthy parent might feel a little bit bittersweet about that. They might say like, oh, I miss when, you know, they were little and we had all these times together and we were really close. But healthy parents still respect their child's autonomy. But some parents take it personally when their child grows. You know, they might say things like, you're not the same person that I raised, or you never used to be like this. And what they really mean is, you are no longer fitting into the version of you that I invented in my mind, the version of you that I wanted to remain unmoving. They confuse their old image of you with your actual identity. Like, a parent might remember dressing a child a certain way, or like bringing them up to believe certain things. But obviously, children develop, they become their own person. And so if your parent remembers like dressing you up, raising you in this certain way, when you step outside of that, whether it's in terms of like your politics, your style, your relationships, your lifestyle, they experience your growth as an insult if they're unhealthy. You know, that can leave you feeling like you are wrong for evolving. It's like you owe it to them to stay in one like frozen version of yourself so that they can be comfortable, is something I'm getting. Or like you're just an extension or a manifestation of them and their beliefs and what they want. I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, that's where the Two of Pentacles comes in. It feels like there's an insecurity around you kind of juggling so many versions of you at once. There's past you, there's present you, there's future you. The you your parents think you are, the you your friends know, the you your colleagues assume you are, and the you are in private. Maybe the you your inner child wants you to be as well. And on top of that, there's like adult responsibilities, you know, there's survival, there's bills, there's expectations. And on the surface, it might look like you are handling everything. It looks like, you know, you're spinning the plates, you're functioning, but inside it can feel like if you make one decisive move, everything could topple. So instead of choosing, it's like you keep trying to keep all the plates in the air, you keep shifting, adapting. Code switching is something I'm getting. For some of you, this is this feeling that literally you live in two different worlds. Maybe you are, as just one example, deeply rooted in a particular culture, religion, or community, but you feel like you have to downplay that in certain spaces for your own safety or maybe to avoid judgment. And you might tell yourself, you know, let's say this is at work or something, and you feel like I can't ask to go and do my daily prayers because it feels like I would be making a big deal about my religion, and that would mean that I don't fit in or something. You could tell yourself, like, it's fine, I don't need to talk about that here, I don't need to mention that part of me. It could be like you wearing a certain piece of jewellery at work that symbolises your faith or culture. You don't do that because you know people would be like hostile towards it, they would discriminate, something like that. But somebody else freely wears their cross or crucifix necklace and talks about prayer, and nobody bats an eye because their religion is acceptable in the culture but yours isn't, something like that. Or if you're queer, let's say, maybe everyone at the office is free to casually mention their husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, but you feel like you have to censor yourself or change pronouns because you worry that someone will take offence to something as simple as you saying like, oh, me and my girlfriend went there last weekend, if you're a woman with another woman, or whatever way it resonates. And sometimes you might experience people even like complimenting you in a, I guess, a backhanded way, like, oh, I know that you're gay, but you're not like one of those gays. You're not in everyone's face with it. You're not complaining about how you're oppressed all the time. So you internalize this message that being fully yourself is like too much, and you end up trying to be one of the good ones, you know, constantly dimming or modifying or shrinking. Okay, the example that's popping into my head now, and I know this one won't apply for all of you, it might just apply for one person. This is actually my own experience, so that's what I'm speaking on. It doesn't have to be like this same thing for you, but it's just to sort of highlight what I mean. So I'm neurodivergent. You could be neurodivergent as well, maybe in the same way as me, maybe in a different way. You know, there's a spectrum. But yeah, I'm neurodivergent. And for a long time, I never really told people or spoke very openly about it. And I was in a situation once, I won't say specifically where, but I often overheard some very disturbing things said about neurodivergent people or people with disabilities. And, you know, given the context of where this was, it was especially like jarring and mean-spirited, I would say. There were like very outdated views that I noticed, very ableist views. And it's like people felt safe offloading their own prejudices and shitty opinions onto me because I guess they had decided in their head that I was like them, i.e. like neurotypical maybe. And that was the narrative that they created about me, but in reality, that was never me. I just appeared that way because I had masked so long and so hard and for so many years, exhausting my own self in the process just so I could have some semblance of normality in my life and just so people wouldn't identify me as like different. And sometimes it felt too late to bring it up. You know, I think to myself, well, you know, I know how they truly feel about neurodivergent people, so how can I safely talk about this without being judged? And when eventually I did speak up and I said like, well, hey, you know, I'm technically neurodivergent, and notice even within that I said technically, because even then I was distancing myself from like the real neurodivergent people that they were talking about in such a negative way in my attempt to kind of like bridge the gap and explain from my perspective. And I was met with this attitude of like, oh yeah, but you're not like that, like you don't do X, Y, and Z, like you don't use it as an excuse. And just to be clear here, I don't think neurodivergence should be an excuse to like do whatever you want and treat people badly. We all have to be accountable here. But we do have to understand that some things are just harder for some people because of disability and life circumstances, and we should have a little bit of compassion for that. And what actually hit me in that moment, in my personal scenario, was actually like how much I'd been hiding and holding back, because all of the things they mentioned to sort of uplift me as like one of the good ones, the things they think like those people do, were things that I actually struggle with. I'd just spent years fighting to keep those struggles invisible to make them more comfortable. And it made me painfully aware of how much of myself I'd had to suppress just to be seen as one of them. And don't get me wrong, like some neurodivergent people can be masking at 100% of their capacity and their struggles are still visible. I was in a privileged position in a way to even be able to mask to that extent in the first place, that a lot of my stuff kind of went unnoticed. But the masking broke me in that process. Like, it affected my health, it burned me out, constantly. It made me realize how much effort I was putting in just to seem fine to people who have never even had to think about any of this, all because I was trying to maintain this image of being one of them. You know, this person who doesn't complain, who just gets on with things, even if it's destroying them on the inside. So something like that, you know, not necessarily that exact situation, but that pattern might be relevant to you, where you keep telling yourself, you know, it's not that important, I can keep suppressing this, but deep down, you can't. It isn't sustainable, and it does have consequences. And that's really what I'm getting at here. You know, sometimes we prioritize other people's comfort over our own truth. And when we keep ignoring our own needs, it does catch up with us, because we're trying to be the version of ourselves that other people want us to be, instead of listening to our inner guidance. And we start to believe we won't be loved if we ever take off that mask. And it isn't just about like big identity markers. It can be something as simple and as painful as like your family not approving of your friendship group or your partner, or, you know, dismissing your passion project as silly, or rolling their eyes when you talk about something that's spiritual or creative or non-practical, something that lights you up. So you learn to compartmentalize your one version of you at home, and another version with your friends, and another version online, and another version at work. And you might tell yourself, you know, it's fine, I don't need to talk about this with them, it's not worth the hassle. But bit by bit by bit, that split. I'm getting the film Split right now. That wasn't me, it was Patricia. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I said split, but that split leaves you feeling like your true self only ever gets to exist in fragments. You're always editing, always anticipating, always thinking, if I show them this part of me, will they still want me? And that's where judgment reverse shows up the loudest. There is a call here. There's a very real, very persistent inner knowing that you are meant to rise and use to become a truer version of yourself, to change direction, to say something out loud, to leave something behind, to claim a label or claim a life that actually fits, to stop living like a guest star in your own story, essentially. And yet sometimes you tell yourself you're not ready, you know, the timing isn't right, you don't want to hurt anybody, you don't want to cause drama, you don't want to be selfish. There's a lot of self-denial in this pile, not because you lack awareness, you don't, because some of you, you're so hyper-aware of the potential fallout that you keep like hitting snooze on your own awakening. But sometimes, you know, this can look like staying in the job that no longer fits because you feel guilty leaving after all the training they invested in you, even if your soul is screaming for something different. Sometimes it looks like staying in that friendship that's now more of an obligation. You don't actually look forward to seeing this person just because you don't want to be ungrateful for their support during a previous chapter. Sometimes it's staying in a community or belief system that no longer feels like home because you don't want to be branded a traitor, is what I'm hearing. Sometimes it's refusing to name your queerness, your spiritual path, your politics, your needs, your neurodivergence, your art, your desire to leave because you're scared of how much it will change things. And you minimize it to yourself. You say, you know, it's not that important, I can manage, I can keep all these parts separate, I can keep things spinning, I can keep this to myself, like I don't want to rock the boat. But the longer you do that, the more it eats away at you. And that's the thing with the judgment reverse. It's not that there isn't a call, it's that you've heard it so many times that now ignoring it hurts more than answering it. And underneath all of this, it's that Six of Cups loyalty again. It's you not wanting to abandon younger you. You don't want to abandon the people who loved you when you were still trying to be who they needed. You don't want to throw away years of investment, history, nostalgia. The fear, the insecurity here isn't just like, what if I choose wrong? It's also, what if choosing myself makes me a bad person? What if I'm disloyal? What if I hurt people? So you juggle two lives, two truths, two versions of you, and it's exhausting. You know, it can lead to this quiet burnout where your mind is constantly like doing risk assessments. You know, if I say this here, what might happen? If I show this part of me, what might I lose? If I leave, will I regret it? At the core, this wound is about believing you don't have the right to fully become who you are if it means disappointing someone, contradicting an old story, or walking away from like how it's always been. You're standing at this doorway of this judgment reversed, you know, one foot inside your past and one foot hovering over your future, and you keep looking back at everyone and everything behind you and checking like, you know, is it okay if I go? Will you hate me if I do? Does this make me ungrateful? But the truth is, you're not abandoning your past by evolving, you're honouring it by allowing it to be what it was, a chapter that brought you here, instead of forcing it to be your whole story. You're not disloyal for outgrowing a version of yourself someone else preferred. You're not selfish for wanting a life that fits who you are now, not just who you were then. And you're not wrong or dramatic or too much for hearing the call and wanting to answer it. You're meant to answer it. You are someone with a powerful calling, you know, a new self that's been trying to rise for a very long time. Your insecurity tells you that becoming this version of you will cost you love and stability and belonging. So yeah, you juggle, you delay, you shrink, you mask, and you apologise, over-apologise, hoping you can somehow keep everyone else comfortable and still quietly become who you are meant to be. This part of your reading right here, it's just naming that ache, acknowledging it, that split, that sense of almost but not yet. And it's not to shame you, but it's to validate how heavy it's been to carry, because you've been living in the moment right before a major awakening for a long, long time now, and deep down, you already know you're allowed to step forward. And can we also talk about the fact you picked the pyjamas sticker, because honestly, that symbolism is so on the nose. I actually nearly laughed. Like, the Six of Cups is nostalgia, it's comfort, it's emotional safety, and you picked the pyjamas. And yes, pyjamas are comfortable, we know that. Trust me, I get it, I live in mine. As soon as I get home, I'm like, get my outside clothes off me, I wanna be in my pyjamas. And yeah, I do that. Maybe you do that too. But here's the thing, whilst pyjamas are very, very comfortable and inviting, we can't live in them all the time. I'd like to, but we can't do that. Maybe you can if you like work from home and never leave the house, but yeah, there are moments in life where we are being asked to get dressed and to step outside and to show up and let ourselves be seen, and not just seen in like our cozy, soft, warm, familiar versions, but seen in our fully expressed, multidimensional, I'm actually a whole person versions. And it's okay to dress up, it's okay to put on your best outfit, it's okay to do your most glam makeup, it is okay to take up space and leave your house from time to time. It's okay to be perceived as more than just the version of you people got comfortable with, because yes, comfort matters, safety matters, warmth matters, but you're not meant to stay in like the emotional equivalent of pyjamas forever. You are allowed to step into a new identity without betraying the old one. You're allowed to evolve without it being seen as disloyal. You are allowed to show the world more of who you are, not just the part that feels familiar, but the part that's ready to grow. And with that said, I want to talk about why you are way more incredible than you even realise, Pal 4. So we are going to get onto the main body of your reading right now. We've talked enough about this wound. Let's banish it. Okay, so we have got the Ten of Swords reversed. Clarifying the Ten of Swords reversed, we have the Three of Wands. We have got the Eight of Coins, the Eight of Pentacles. Clarifying the Eight of Pentacles, we've got the Tower reversed. Okay, interesting. We have got the Ten of Cups. And clarifying the Ten of Cups, we have got the Five of Wands. Okay. And from the Modern Witch spiritual deck, we have got Love. And from the Archetypes Oracle, we have got Samaritan. Light attributes, refines your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore. Shadow attribute, exacting appreciation and recognition for the help you offer. Okay, interesting. Pal 4, let me just say, you are fucking amazing, because first of all, if you need to hear this, the worst is over and you made it through that chapter. You did that. Okay, with Judgment Reverse that we saw earlier, it feels like there was some kind of reckoning, some moment of truth that you either avoided for a long time or you were just absolutely dreading. You might have been expecting the worst, like, you know, if this comes out, if I say this, if I choose this, everything, you know, life as I know it will collapse. But the Ten of Swords reversed with the Three of Wands is basically Spirit saying the hardest bit is done here. You know, the breaking point has already been reached. The ending has happened. And not only are you still here, but this was never ever meant to be the end of you. This was just the beginning, Pal 4. And you are amazing because you are meeting your new life head on, maybe for the first time in a long time. You might have been honest about something here. You might have come clean about something. You might have admitted, I can't do this anymore, or this isn't me anymore, or this can't go on as it is. You reached that point where something had to give, and instead of betraying yourself yet again, you chose you with love. And the beautiful part is, like, you thought this conclusion would be the end of you, but it wasn't. You thought the world would end, and it didn't. You're still here. You know, maybe life looks different now. Maybe you are still dealing with some chaos or the aftermath, Maybe there are still some challenges and those awkward in-between sort of bits, but you did the thing, you did that. And for some of you, you're even wondering why you didn't do it sooner, because now you can see the horizon again. You know, the Three of Wands, it's that moment of standing on new ground and being like, oh, like there's actually more out here for me. New doors opening. A different vantage point, the feeling that your future is something that you choose now rather than something handed to you by default and you just have to accept it. And that's so important. You know, this Three of Wands, it's your commitment to a future that you are actively choosing, not a future somebody else laid out, not a script you were handed, not a narrative someone has cornered you into. You had that moment of awakening where you said, I can't keep pretending that this fits. I can't keep living as the old version of me because it makes other people more comfortable. And nobody did that work for you. You did it, pal 4. And it's not because, you know, you're some villain who wanted to blow everything up to like prove a point. This wasn't about spite, this was about love. But fundamentally, this time it was love for yourself. You realised that you had gone too long without pouring anything back into you. And that's not easy, you know, when you've spent years, maybe a lifetime, giving to others, being generous with your time and energy, worrying more about the impact on everyone else than the impact on your own soul. In the past, it would have been so easy for you to brush your feelings off and say like, oh, do you know what, like, it's not that important. I can love myself another day. I'll stay quiet. I'll hold off. That's been your pattern, you know, it's fine, I'll cope. But you finally hit that point where it wasn't so fine anymore and you knew you needed to stay aligned long enough for your new life to actually meet you halfway. And you held steady. And I'm so proud of you for that. If no one else has told you that, pal 4, I am proud. Because one thing about you, pal 4, is that you have such a huge heart. You know, you're always considering, how will this affect them? How will this be received? Will this hurt someone I care about? And that is a beautiful trait. But you reached a point where ignoring your own needs wasn't noble anymore. It was harmful. You know, you had to look at things for what they were and refuse to slip back into like, you know, maybe I'm being dramatic, maybe it's not that bad, maybe I can hold on a little bit longer. I don't know if sending a message has something to do with it, like sending a text message, but I am getting this image in my head. Maybe it does apply for some of you, but this is just to highlight what I mean. It's somebody hovering over the send button or like standing at a doorway on the verge of saying this one honest thing and then pulling back at the last second, like telling themselves, oh, do you know what? It doesn't matter. And you've done that so many times, pal 4. Maybe not in the exact same way, maybe not when it comes to like sending a message, but you've held back on something you wanted to say. And it's because your love for other people is so big. Like, that's amazing. Like, you are the kind of person who has in the past been a punching bag. Like, people feel like they can say what they want to you, they can unload on you, they can criticize you, and you just take it, you listen, you absorb it, you think about it, and you still remain kind. But then in the past, maybe the second you have said one thing, you've given somebody one tiny little bit of criticism, you've established one boundary, you've said one honest sentence, suddenly they cry, they crumble, they make it about how hurt they are. And because you can't bear to see them upset, you might try and rush in and patch it up, like, oh no, I didn't mean it like that, it's fine, forget I said anything. Your truth gets put back on the shelf, so their feelings come first, again. And that's what couldn't go on. You had to say something. And more importantly, what it might be like hardest for you is you had to stick to it, because you guys could go back and forth, especially when it came to like making this decision. You had to let the words land without wanting to snatch them back, and that was difficult. You had to let people be uncomfortable or confused or even upset, and trust that this discomfort was still better than betraying yourself this time. And that is huge. That is the 10 of Wands reversed with the 3 of Wands. That moment where you said, I won't die from this, I live and I will live as myself, and I am better for establishing this truth and letting it be free. Because the truth is, sometimes we actually hurt the people we love more by not being honest with them, by enabling, by swallowing everything. You know, sometimes resentment builds in the quiet, it collects in all these unsaid places, and then over time love can curdle into that resentment and bitterness when we never allow the relationship to grow, to evolve, to hold our full humanity. And then suddenly there's this chasm, there's this huge gap between us and the person we care about, because they've only ever known the edited version of us, and that's not fair to you, and it's not fair to them either. And that can be a painful truth. And you're incredible because you refuse to back down this time. You know, you chose joy over comfort. You chose truth over performance. You chose to be heard, even when your whole system was screaming and saying to you, oh, I can't hurt them. And when people push back, you know, when they question you and when they said to you, okay, like, fine, so this is who you are now. So what's next? Where are you going? What are you doing? What does this mean? You stood there and you said, you know, maybe literally or maybe energetically, I don't know yet, but I know that I can't stay here. And that was the turning point. That was enough. That was the first step. You chose your future over the illusion of peace. And then, you know, we get this Eight of Pentacles with the Tower reversed. This is you doing the real work, not just the, like, cute, Instagrammable self-care. It's not the, like, I took a bath and I lit a candle and I did a face mask kind of healing. This is the graft. Like, this is the sweaty, repetitive, unglamorous kind of healing, the kind that changes your life, though. And, you know, it would have been so easy to cling to the old building, to say to yourself, you know, this tower has been here for centuries, like, what do you mean it's going to collapse? I'll just patch the cracks, it'll be fine. You might have told yourself, like, what if I jump off this tower and break my legs for nothing? What if I'm being dramatic and the building never actually falls? What if I ruin something perfectly good? That's the tower reversed. You know, it's knowing deep down that the structure is unstable, but sort of bargaining with yourself, saying, maybe I'll just hold on a bit longer. Maybe the tower will stay upright a bit longer. But some part of you knew, no, I'm just hearing no, something has to be different. And instead of waiting for everything to, like, crash down around you, you started making moves. You didn't necessarily, like, yeet yourself off the top floor in one dramatic jump. Some of you climbed down slowly, steadily, step by step, shakily, inch by inch, but that still counts. You are amazing because you chose a controlled demolition over, like, total collapse. The Eight of Pentacles is that slow, devoted work of rebuilding. It's you choosing to face the shadow as well as the softness. You dedicated yourself to something different so you wouldn't go down with the crumbling tower. So this is about you showing up day after day even when no one is clapping. This is you practicing new habits until they become second nature. This is you taking the difficult conversation or boundary or choice and repeating it until your nervous system stops freaking out. This is you doing the scary thing, then doing it again and again and again until it feels a little tiny bit less terrifying. You know, maybe this looked like you forcing yourself to post that video or that piece of content, that artwork, instead of immediately wanting to delete it because it's not perfect. Maybe it was like sending the email asking for help. Maybe it was going to therapy. Maybe it was asking for accommodations at work instead of, like, silently overperforming through the pain. Maybe it was gently but consistently correcting someone who kept using the wrong name or the wrong pronouns or the wrong label, like the wrong version of you. And at first it probably felt fucking awful, like unsteady, like you wanted to crawl out of your skin and just go back to whatever kept the peace. But you didn't. You kept that video up. You didn't unsend that message. You didn't instantly apologize for existing. You repeated the new pattern instead of the old one, and now those repetitions are stacking up into mastery. You didn't rush it. You didn't expect yourself to transform overnight. You worked like a craftsperson, you know, chipping away, refining, trying again. It's very unflashy, but it's the kind of work that changes everything. It's transformational. It's the kind of work that earns you the right to look in the mirror and say to yourself, I am fucking proud of who I am right now. You deserve that, powerful. And the thing is, nothing was ever handed to you on, like, a silver platter. You know, you had to, like, walk yourself out of the burning building whilst inhaling the smoke. You had to step onto land that didn't feel stable yet. And you had to say, you know, I'll trust this. I'll learn to feel safe here through repetition, through exposure, through doing it scared. Exposure therapy could be significant here. That could be a confirmation. That's how you're regulating your nervous system now, not by avoiding the fear, but by proving to yourself over and over, I can survive this, I can show up, I can hold my own. And you are amazing because you didn't give up. You didn't choose the, like, easier, smaller, comfortable, but kind of suffocating lie. You chose to honour your calling, to be authentically you, with love, but with practicality and devotion. You have earned the right to love the person you become. Then, you know, we have the Ten of Cups with the Five of Wands, and this is where it all comes together. This is you basically asking yourself, is the pretty picture of who I've always been and the safety of how people react to that version more important to me than my actual joy? And you said no. I must choose my joy now. The Ten of Cups is your emotional fulfillment, your safe love, your chosen family, your sense of home and belonging in your own life. And the Five of Wands is that messy, loud, like everyone shouting over each other kind of energy. It's not destruction, or I don't usually interpret it that way. It's more like people trying to be heard, like chaos, competition, people all trying to take up space at once. That's what it's been like for you internally and externally, maybe. You know, everyone else's voices, opinions, expectations, memories of who you are meant to be, all clashing with your new emerging truth. And for so long, when that initial conflict started, you tapped out, maybe you backed down, you'd keep quiet, you let other people shout over you, you would keep the label of like easygoing, peacekeeper, helpful, not a problem, one of the good ones, because you knew what would happen if you actually let your full truth into the building. But this time, it's like, I'm hearing you allowed yourself to be a problem. You let the Five of Wands happen. You allowed mess, arguments, discomfort, your own, other people's. You said, I will be heard this time. You are not taking my voice away from me again. And yet, it probably stirred drama. There may have been people trying to talk over you, to twist your words, to purposely misunderstand you, to make you feel like the villain for changing, but you held the line long enough that eventually there was enough silence for your truth to land. And that's where you found your joy and your true love for yourself. And you also changed your definition of what love actually is for yourself and other people. You know, you realize that love is not enabling people. Love is not pacifying or placating them just to avoid their tantrums. Love is not bending yourself into a pretzel so no one else has to do the work of growth. Love is not making yourself smaller so that you're easier to tolerate. Sometimes real love is saying the uncomfortable thing, the thing that you don't want to say but you have to say. Sometimes real love is not making yourself endlessly palatable. Sometimes love is saying, I will not destroy myself for your comfort. And there's a bit here that might sting a little bit for some of you, but I do think it's important to mention it. And I say this with zero judgment because I have been in this position too. And it's that, like, sometimes when we are people and we have big hearts and we have empathy for others, sometimes we convince ourselves that we are being generous and selfless and altruistic when actually we are protecting ourselves. You know, we tell ourselves, I'm not saying anything because I don't want to hurt them, when underneath that is also like, I don't want to deal with the fallout. I don't want to deal with the tears, the arguments, the guilt, the discomfort, the reaction. And that does not in any way make you a bad person, powerful, or it makes you human. You know what it's like to be hurt, so you never want to be the one causing pain. But then, you know, the relationship becomes built on these half-truths and performance, on you pretending you're okay when you're not, on other people loving a version of you that isn't fully real. And I've done this in friendships before myself. You know, I've swallowed my feelings because I thought to myself, you know, if I say this, they won't be able to handle it. Like, I know this person, I know they don't regulate their emotions well, they'll spiral, they'll make it about them. So I took it on and I didn't say anything, you know, even when that person knows that I struggle with my emotions too, or my mental health, and they have said like far harsher things to me without a second thought, seemingly. And I told myself throughout all that I was being kind and I was protecting them. But really, I was also protecting my own fear of conflict, my fear of losing them, my fear of being the bad one. And again, you know, I'm not talking about situations where being honest would put you in danger or put you at risk of like losing your housing or your safety or your basic needs. Sometimes staying quiet is born from survival and we have to do it. I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about relationships that could hold more truth and more growth and more evolution if someone was brave enough to speak. And you have been that brave person, powerful. And that's what makes you amazing. You did the hard thing, not because you wanted to hurt anyone, but because you finally understood that giving people the chance to meet you honestly is actually the most generous thing you can do. You're giving them the opportunity to love you, the real you as well, not the mask. And if they can't, if your happiness, your identity, your needs, your truth ruins their day because you are queer and you wore a pride bracelet, or you asked for a reasonable adjustment at work, or you refuse to downplay your culture or your disability or your beliefs or your boundaries, then that says far more about them than it ever will about you. So yeah, some examples of this energy is like if you ask for those accommodations at work and then suddenly someone acts like you're being really difficult or you're demanding things because you are no longer silently suffering for their benefit, It's like they reminisce about the old version of you who just coped, who just got on with things, who just struggled without saying anything. But if you knew that version of you was drowning, is it fair for them to want you to go back to that at the expense of yourself? No. Or this is like if you show up to a family event wearing something gender non-conforming or something that visibly identifies your queerness, let's say, as one example, or you speak openly about your partner in a same-schmex relationship, let's say, and an older relative says to you, like, oh, you never used to be like this, do you have to rub it in our faces? They act like your existence is an attack, but you know now it is not your job to shrink so that they can stay comfortable in their outdated worldview. You're no longer willing to stay quiet, and that is so brave. You know there might be pushback, but you are choosing joy anyway. You are choosing the Ten of Cups life. Genuine emotional safety, honest relationships, soul family who know you, the real you, over the fake piece of always being the accommodating one. And this love card, this is about your heart. It's about your heart being this vase with flowers growing out of it. It's spirit saying, like, love grows in you, from you, because of you. Not because you twisted yourself into a shape that was easier for others to love. Your heart can bloom again. After anything, it doesn't need to stay stuck in the past to honor the past. It has room for new memories and new friendships and new stories and new versions of you. And the Samaritan archetype wraps this up really perfectly. You know, in its light form, it's your capacity to help even those you might prefer to ignore. You have this deep, intuitive, moral heart. You care about fairness, you care about kindness, about people who are struggling. Even if they're not always easy to love, you show up for people in ways they may never understand. You translate emotions, you hold space, you absorb tension, you soothe, you support. But the shadow side talks about like exacting appreciation and recognition for the help you offer. And if that's ever been you, again, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's about naming the hurt. You know, when you've spent so long being the helper, the peacemaker, the quiet one, the one who swallows their own needs, of course there's a part of you that aches to be seen, to be appreciated, to have someone say, like, I know how much you've sacrificed. And I also think this Shadow Samaritan side, it's an acknowledgement that sometimes, you know, we do quietly want that praise for making ourselves smaller when nobody actually asked us to. And that can be a hard truth to hold. You know, we want credit for swallowing our hurt or for being the bigger person, for always letting things slide. And then we feel stung when no one thanks us for it. But how can they thank us for something they don't even know we're doing? If we're being disingenuous, if we're saying it's fine when it isn't, if we're brushing things off or pretending that we're okay when we're not, that was still our choice, even if it felt like the only option at the time. That's why, you know, in big blow-up arguments, people end up sort of throwing things in each other's faces from the past. And they're like, if it's where everything comes tumbling out, like, oh, well, I did this for you and I was there for you in all these times and I never criticised you even though I could have, and now you're upset with me over this one little thing. And it's like, okay, but who asked you not to speak up? Who asked you to keep all that inside? And again, I'm not talking about those situations where speaking your truth would literally put your safety at risk. That's a totally different thing. I'm talking about the times where resentment builds because we kept choosing silence and then it all comes crashing out at once. And you might say, even in that might be difficult to sit with because you might be thinking, powerful, like, well, you know, they didn't ask me to do this, but I noticed that they gave me the silent treatment when I did speak up. Or they looked hurt, or they ignored me, and that was unbearable, so I stopped. And that's valid, and they're allowed to react how they react, and you're allowed to notice that and to feel uncomfortable. But it still doesn't mean that you have to immediately take your truth back or keep moulding yourself into something that doesn't feel aligned. You're allowed to sit with somebody else's discomfort without immediately wanting to fix it. You're exhausted from being the responsible one, you know, the emotional sponge, the one who remembers everyone else's sensitivity while no one seems to remember yours. But you are learning that you don't have to help people at the cost of yourself. You don't have to earn your place through being a martyr. You don't have to keep being one of the good ones just because that narrative feels familiar. Your heart is allowed to open for you now. You're allowed to give yourself the care and devotion you've always given to everyone else so freely. And yeah, you absolutely should love yourself because you bloody earned it. You absolutely should give yourself your flowers because you've come so far. You've done such hard internal work, and this is still like truly just the beginning of your story, powerful. So that is what I'm getting for your reading today, and that is where I'm going to leave you today, my powerful loves. That's why you're way more amazing than you even realise. I just want to thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for listening and thank you for sharing your beautiful energy with me. I appreciate you more than you could ever know. If you enjoyed this reading and you want to support the channel, if any tiny bit resonated, the best ways to do that are super simple. You can like the video, you can leave a comment, you can hype, share, sub, any of that. All of it genuinely helps a small creator like me more than you realise. And obviously we discussed some heavy topics today. If you're a little bit shy about saying what resonated, that's okay. Even dropping an emoji or telling me which pile you picked makes a huge difference in terms of the algorithm pushing me out there. So if you're on the fence, please go for it if you can, if you feel able to. I would be really grateful and it's always so appreciated. So thank you again for spending your time with me today. I adore you, Pal 4. Take care and I will see you in the next one. Hi Pal 5 Collective, if you chose the Good Karma Tarot and you chose the bottle sticker and you chose Pal 5, you are in the correct place. Welcome to your reading, friends. If you would like a full breakdown regarding everything this reading will entail, please check out my introduction. I do go through absolutely everything there. I will also leave some details in the pinned comment below for your reference. I would recommend checking at least one of those out so you know what to expect from this reading today. But today's reading is titled The Truth, or Why You're So Lovable and Way More Amazing Than You Think. Your insecurities need a reality check. And just as a very, very brief overview, imagine me as Tarot Joe Goldberg peeking around the metaphysical corner, seeing your potential, noticing you spiraling over things you don't need to be worrying about. And I'm like, it's okay, I can fix it, I can fix you. Not literally, don't panic, but spiritually. That's the level of dramatic, delusional devotion I'm trying to bring to your confidence today. I am basically stalking your self-worth, like, babe, you don't even know how amazing you are. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you, I've got this. So we're looking at these first 3 cards and we're going to identify an insecurity or wound. We're going to look at where it may have come from. And then we're going to move into the full-on I don't know her portion of the reading, the bit where we properly hype you up and remind you why you are so iconic and give your insecurities the eviction notice they didn't even know was coming. And that's where the real magic starts, because we're giving you the truth. And that's that you're far more amazing and lovable and powerful and magical than you even realise. So without hesitation, let's have a look at the cards we pulled for you. I'm going to move your little bottle sticker to one side for now so we can focus on the cards. And starting over here on the left, we've got, okay, big energy starting out, the Tower Reverse. That came up in Pile 4? Was it Pile 4? Why am I asking you? Because you don't know. I should know, but I forgot. But we got the Tower reversed. And we've got the King of Swords reversed. And we have got the Empress reversed. Okay. Pile 5. Your energy is intense in the most beautifully powerful way. Yes, by the time we get to Pile 5, there are always like overlapping themes, things we've discussed in the previous piles. And for this pile, there is like definitely a harsh inner critic, perfectionism that's coming through, responsibility, a wound surrounding that. But the flavour of this pile is different to the previous piles. You know, other piles, to some extent, it's like feared embarrassment or judgment or rejection or like getting it wrong. And that could show up a little bit here too. But one of the bigger themes I'm getting for you guys is that you fear collapse. Like, you fear what happens when the person who holds up the entire world finally puts their arms down. This isn't about like being liked. This isn't about approval. This is about survival. This is about being the one who became strong long before you ever got to be soft. So even when you were young, why do I want to say even from the moment you were born? It's like life handed you roles you shouldn't have had yet. So some of you could have been parentified, called like wise beyond your years, forced to deal with adult emotions or responsibilities, adult chaos before you even had the emotional vocabulary for it. Some of you, for example, could have grown up in a household where conflict, instability, addiction, volatility, or emotional maturity meant that you were the stabilizer, you were the emotional regulator, you were like the child who had to tuck an adult into bed, you were the older sibling stepping into the role of a third parent. You were the responsible one, the one who everyone leaned on, the one who held the family structure together, like a little tiny baby architect, desperately like patching holes in a leaking roof. There's also something here that feels a lot like eldest daughter syndrome. If you identify with that, Doesn't mean you have to be the eldest. Literally, you don't have to be a daughter at all. It's more about the energy. It's the role of being the one who holds everything together, the one who senses the emotional weather in the household, the one who steps up and takes charge because no one else will. It's the experience of being raised as that responsible one, the reliable one, the good one who anticipates everyone's needs before the needs are spoken. It's being the family problem solver, the mediator, the emotional parent, the one who is forced to grow up too quickly because someone had to. If you didn't, who would? This energy creates adults who are like hyper capable and hyper independent on the outside, but quietly exhausted on the inside. Adults who apologize for having needs. Adults who think setting boundaries is being difficult. Adults who feel guilty when they can't carry everyone's burdens anymore. You know, eldest daughter syndrome isn't about birth order necessarily. It's about being cast as the backbone long before you were old enough to know that you deserve to lean on someone too. If this resonates, that wound is playing into your insecurity. It's this belief that if you stop performing or you stop being strong, everything will fall apart. It won't, but I understand why it feels that way. And when that becomes your origin story, your entire nervous system learns one lesson. And that lesson is like, if I'm not the one holding everything together, everything will fall apart. This is why the Tower reversed is your shadow. You aren't afraid of change necessarily in the usual way. You're afraid of collapse because you have lived through collapse and you've seen what happens when somebody isn't paying attention. You've seen what chaos looks like up close. You have maybe lived in environments held together by duct tape and denial. So now you grip the rubble with both hands and you whisper, not again, not on my watch. You saw warning signs your whole childhood and you learned to suppress your own needs to manage everyone else's behaviour. You became the peacekeeper, the fixer, the emotional firefighter in a house that was always one spark away from burning down. This is why your wound is fundamentally different from the other piles. For other piles, it was like fear of being seen incorrectly. You fear what happens after you're seen because being seen has never been safe. And it's like because you might have grown up with this intense hypervigilance, you develop this inner voice that mirrors the people who once scared you or disappointed you or relied on you too heavily. That's your King of Swords reverse. This is a drill sergeant. It's a tyrant, a cold, authoritarian, don't you dare show weakness taskmaster. Some of you could have literally had a person in your life, a caregiver, father, mother, boss, teacher, partner who was like this, emotionally detached, hypercritical, controlling, manipulative, or weaponizing logic to shut down your feelings. Others of you absorb this from being bullied or talked down to or punished for being emotional or needing something. There's a wound around needing something, so now it's like you bully yourself before anyone else can. You cut yourself down faster than they can. You silence your needs so that you're not a problem to people. You keep your head high and your voice steady because falling apart has never been an option for you. This is not the self-criticism of someone who wants to be perfect. This is the self-criticism of someone who learned that mistakes were dangerous. It's not about your ego. It's like emotional vulnerability being dangerous. Tears were dangerous. So why am I hearing adopted the voice of your captor? Adopted the voice of your captor as your protector. You became the cold one with yourself because somebody had to be in control. It's almost a Stockholm syndrome, but with your own inner critic. You think you need harshness sometimes when what you actually need might be softness, but there is an insecurity around receiving. Because layered beneath that, we have this Empress reverse, which is where your deepest wound lives. That's the wound of not feeling safe receiving, not feeling safe being nurtured, not feeling safe asking for help, not feeling safe being soft. There is an insecurity here around being mothered, mothering others, or mothering yourself. You may have felt like you had to mother your own parents, your siblings, your partners, your friends. So now nurturing others comes naturally, but nurturing yourself feels foreign. It feels too indulgent or even like a threat. And this energy, it comes with all kinds of different manifestations. You might be somebody who, you always feel like you have to do things for everybody else. And it's like you're saying because nobody else will do it. And you might have in the past attracted partners who were dependent, codependent, chaotic, who lent on you like you're their emotional parent. You may merge with your partners or friends even, sometimes losing yourself in their needs, their identities, their dreams, because that's how you learn to survive. You may feel overly responsible for everyone's mood, walking on eggshells. You feel responsible for other people's safety and joy and emotional stability, because that's the role you were given long before you even had the choice. And yeah, ironically, the person you mother the very least is you. You give everyone else grace and softness and excuses and compassion. You give second chances, but for yourself, you demand the impossible. You require perfection. You keep that stiff upper lip. You don't allow a crack in the facade, because somewhere along the way, you learn that if you crumble, the whole house crumbles. And yeah, there's this wound around allowing others to take care of themselves. You may find yourself unconsciously trying to step in, fix things, smooth things over, absorb the conflict. You might find yourself taking the blame because you've been conditioned to believe everything is so fragile and you are the one responsible for holding it steady. It could even show up physically, like on your body. You may notice, and this isn't anything diagnostic, obviously if you have anything going on that's new, get it checked out by a medical professional. I'm not a medical professional, but if it's a confirmation for you, I'm thinking like tight shoulders, chronic back pain, maybe hormonal imbalances, sacral chakra blocks, wounds around fertility, struggles with your cycle. Basically like your body acting like it's always been carrying a village on its back. And when it comes to creating things even, whether that's literal children, your art, dreams, creating a career path or creating new versions of yourself, there can be a bit of a block because creating requires flow, it requires softness, receptivity. Creating requires trust. It requires, letting things go instead of controlling every outcome. But if you grew up with instability, creation may feel dangerous. If you are a parent now, literally or metaphorically, you might swing between extremes, wanting to give your child everything you never had, but also fearing you'll accidentally recreate the cycles you desperately wanted to break. On the other hand, some of you could be child-free because you feel safer not repeating patterns at all. Some of you are parents who give everything and then you worry you're giving too much. Some of you cradle creative dreams like they are fragile little eggs that could crack if you breathe too hard. So Power 5, your insecurity, it's not necessarily you saying, I'm not enough. It's, if I stop holding everything together, everything breaks. But the truth that Spirit wants you to hear is that everything breaking was never your responsibility in the first place. You were a child holding up a collapsing building. You were the emotional support beam in a house built on uneven ground. You were the one holding hands, soothing storms, patching holes, absorbing the fallout. And now it's okay for you to put it down. You do get to soften and to receive and to be held. And this is why your reading is so powerful, not necessarily because it's like the hardest or the heaviest. I can't speak to anyone else's situation, but I know this was fucking hard. But because it's the story of someone who became their own fortress. And you're now learning that you don't have to be at war anymore. And you're not collapsing. That's the thing, you're finally opening. You're not failing. You're finally safe enough to rest. You're not breaking. You're actually blooming in a way that you were never allowed to bloom before. Other piles, some of them, it's like they were learning how to find their voice. And yeah, that's a part of your story too. But fundamentally, a big part of this is like you learning how to put down the armor. Other piles, some of them are healing insecurity, whereas you are healing survival instincts. Other piles might be fearing judgment, you fear letting go. And that's why this pile is really, really special and so rare and so incredibly powerful, because you are not just healing a wound, you are rewriting the entire architecture of what safety means in your own body. You're not amazing because you've carried everything for so long. You're amazing because you are finally learning how to let someone, and maybe for the first time ever, carry you. And also, let's talk a little bit about the sticker you chose, the bottle, because that's exactly what this wound feels like, bottling things up for so long you don't even realise how much pressure has built inside you. Maybe you learned early on that your needs were too much, or that expressing your needs created extra tension that would tip everything over the edge, or that being the strong one was your role, and so you just contained it, you capped it, you pressed it down. And the thing about bottles is, they only look calm from the outside, inside everything is fizzing, it's building, it's waiting for release, and when that cork finally pops, sometimes it flies off and it hits someone who happens to be standing too close. Sometimes the release feels messy and dramatic, but then the champagne actually flows. Then it's time for the celebration, the relief, the truth, the freedom, the sparkle you've been suppressing. The bottle wasn't meant to stay sealed forever. You weren't meant to stay sealed forever. The pressure you feel is not a flaw. It's a sign that you were never designed to keep all of that inside. You were meant to open, to breathe, to overflow. And the good stuff, that comes out after the cork finally gives. It also, it looks like a potion bottle. Let's not ignore that. For some of you, essential oils, aromatherapy, or relaxation rituals might actually be relevant. I'm thinking lavender, eucalyptus, chamomile, anything that calms the nervous system or softens some of those edges. But symbolically, it's kind of saying like you've been carrying around this potion your whole life. You were always the remedy, the magic, the softness, the release, but you kept it sealed inside the bottle. You had the medicine the whole time, the antidote to your own burnout and emotional suppression. You just weren't letting yourself uncork it. And now you're learning that your healing, your softness, your truth, your voice, that was the potion all along. You just needed to be able to give it to yourself the way you do for other people. So that is the wound. Let's take a look at what makes you so incredible and amazing, Pile 5. Way more incredible and amazing than you even realise. Let's get to the main body of this reading. Okay, let's have a look at the cards we pulled for you, Pile 5. So over here, we've got the Two of Pentacles reversed, and clarifying the Two of Pentacles reversed is the Emperor reversed. We have got the Two of Cups, and clarifying the Two of Cups is the Ace of Swords. That's so cool. We've got the Hierophant reversed. Okay, cool. And clarifying the Hierophant reversed is the King of Wands. And from the Modern Witch Spiritual deck, we have Passion. And from the Archetypes Oracle, we've got King. This has come out a few times in my readings. Light attributes, enlightened, benevolent leadership, benefiting those in your charge. Shadow attribute, excessive feelings of entitlement, rulership without restraint. Okay, Pile 5. The main body of this reading honestly feels like slowly unclenching every muscle in your body after a lifetime of bracing. This is where we talk about why you're actually incredible, okay? Not because you have held everything together perfectly, but because you are finally realising you were never meant to hold that much in the first place. You really weren't. With the Two of Pentacles reversed and the Emperor reversed, you've kind of realised that it's not that you lost your rhythm necessarily somewhere along the way. It's that you were actually never given a chance to find your rhythm. Like that opportunity for safety and balance was stripped away from you so early on. Like you were thrown into constant juggling, constant responsibility, constantly keeping everyone else afloat. And somewhere in the mayhem, your own needs got quietly erased. It wasn't like I'm choosing to be this strong, stoic person. It was more like, if I don't do this, who else will? And over time, that just became your default, your baseline. And for a lot of you, this has been felt in a very, very physical way. And, again, just to be super clear, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not diagnosing anyone. These are just extra confirmations. If you already know these themes have been relevant for you. But there's something here about your body stepping in and saying, I cannot carry on living the way I'm living. I'm hearing nervous system rigidity, that feeling of never being able to let go, even for 1 second, being in that constant heightened state, constantly aroused, not in a schmexy kind of way, in a stressed way. And we throw the word stress around very casually, which is fine. People say, oh, I've had a stressful day at work. Tonight I'm gonna have a bubble bath and meditate and I'll be all right. I just need a good night's sleep because I'm stressed today. And that's valid for acute level stress. We all have days like that. But when you're so deeply entrenched in survival mode and a certain level of stress becomes your default state, like your version of neutral, over time that's going to have a real impact on the body and on your physical health and your mental health, especially when you've internalized this role of I have that responsibility, I have to fix it, I have to sort it. No one else can do this. And the thing is, not all stress is inherently bad in itself. I'm thinking of how exercise is technically like stress on the body. Yes, exercise is a physical stressor, but it's a beneficial one for most able-bodied people that triggers a stress response and then leads to positive adaptations. Short-term, your stress hormones like cortisol can spike, but regular appropriate movement actually helps lower them over time. Exercise could be significant to this pile. It builds resilience, it releases endorphins, it improves mood, it helps you cope better with other types of stress. So some stress, in a safe and contained way, if you are able-bodied and it's appropriate, can be good for you. But then we have that other kind of stress, continually elevated levels of cortisol, that feeling of never being safe, never truly relaxing. And even when you're in that bubble bath, because your brain is still running through like 50,000 million responsibilities, you're physically in bed maybe, but mentally still on duty. Duty is what I'm hearing. That's the kind of tension that can impact your hormones, your health, your cycle, your sleep, your digestion, all of it. And I feel like many of you, it's like you got to that point where your body or your mind just said like, I can't continue like this. And that's where this reversed Emperor energy becomes kind of, why do I want to say holy? Holy, actually. You've been brave enough to recognize that overcompensating and gripping everything so tightly is actually more dangerous now than doing things differently. You've started to experiment with relinquishing control, not immediately swooping in to fix everything and everyone, letting someone sit with the consequences of their own choices instead of running in with like a mop and a bucket every single time. It feels like for some of you there are definitely wounds here around either fathers or institutions, around authority and protection. Something about balancing the masculine and healing the feminine is coming through really, really strongly. For some of you, again, it's like you had to be your own protector way too early. So now it shows up in hyper-independence, always denying help even when you could really do with it. Not allowing anyone to take care of you because it feels so unnatural, like you're betraying your role. Feeling guilty when you break down or have a valid crash out, or even when you cry or just expose any level of emotion. Maybe apologizing for being angry or passionate about something, feeling like you always have to be seen as stoic and composed because the strong one cannot collapse. Feeling like there's nobody else to do the job, so of course you pick up the slack with work, with domestic labour, with childcare, with emotional labour, all the unseen bits of glue that hold everyone else's life together. And sometimes to survive, you've had to be stern or exert discipline, or at times maybe even be a little bit controlling. And that's where like another layer of this wound hits, because you've had those moments of looking in the mirror and thinking, oh my God, am I becoming everything I said I wouldn't be? For some of you, that might have been triggered by a comment. It doesn't have to be this example for you, but if you've opened up to your child and said, I never want to be like my parents, during an argument, maybe that child said to you, like, you always talk about how you don't want to be like grandma, but right now you're making me feel how you said she made you feel. And that cuts straight into that core wound. You never wanted to be the oppressor. You never set out to create that dynamic or to repeat it. You were trying so hard to lean away from what hurt you, and maybe you accidentally swung in a full circle and ended up repeating some of it. Not because you're bad, it's because you were never taught another template. That's not for everyone, but take it if it resonates. And that's where this Two of Cups and the Ace of Swords combination comes in, essentially like a lightning bolt of clarity. This is that breakthrough moment of seeing yourself clearly for the first time in a long time. It's that moment where you say, like, wait, this actually isn't normal, like, this isn't the only way it can be. For so long, that structure that you operated in just felt like, this is how it has to be, this is what I've learned, this is what I've internalized, and this is what I've built my empire on. And now the Ace of Swords is like this sharp, clean line cutting through the fog and saying it does not have to be this way forever. Maybe before it felt like there was no other route. You just do everything, you hold it all, you keep going. People around you might even be in awe of it, like, how do they do everything? They're amazing, they're so incredible. But you never really thought of yourself as amazing. You just thought, like, this is what has to be done, this is what we do. You were that king energy in the shadow sense, like, this is what I must do to look after my people, my empire. Whether, your people are your family, your colleagues, your friends, your community, it felt expected. It felt like an obligation. It's a role you slipped into so young and you never got the opportunity to step out of it. And I'm sorry I keep using parenthood as an example. There could be some wounds around parenthood here, but that doesn't have to be the case. I'm just using this to try and put these ideas into a tangible context, as I do with all my examples. And some of you aren't parents, and some of you don't want to be, and that's okay. I'm also not a parent of a human child, but it's just such an easy visual for the energy I'm feeling. Like, I am in my early 30s, so I've got friends who have kids, friends who are starting to have kids, friends who are thinking about it, and friends who will never want them, and all of that is valid. And I know, like I've said to my friends with children before, I'm in awe of you, because how do you do it all? And I know that question might be annoying to parents, But I'm someone, you know, with my own health stuff going on, my own disabilities, and sometimes just keeping on top of myself is hard enough. So I truly look at people caring for kids, or it doesn't have to be kids, for older relatives maybe, or doing all these things, working all the time, whatever it is. And I'm like, you're so incredible, like, how do you do that? And the answer I hear from those people over and over is usually something like, I just do. Like, there's no other choice, you know, even when I'm sick, even when I'm exhausted, I get up and do it because they depend on me. And if I don't, who will? And they never expect a medal for it. They just do it because it's expected. And, you know, whilst this can apply to any gender, there is a reason I keep mentioning mothers in particular, because without getting into the whole thing, you know, patriarchy, gender roles, division of labour, that thing where, like, a dad takes his kid to the park once and everyone's like, wow, what an amazing dad, like, so involved, babysitting, helping mum out. And it's like, he's not helping, like, that's his child. Meanwhile, the mum is there every single day, doing nappies and school runs and appointments and emotional triaging, running around the house, holding everyone's schedules in her brain. And that's just seen as, like, normal. That's expected. That's the baseline. Nobody claps. Nobody says, like, how does she do it all? She's amazing, until something goes wrong. I'm thinking of the show All Her Fault right now, if you've seen that. I won't give any spoilers, but it's kind of like, yeah, if you've watched the show, you'll know, but it explores themes to do with that. And it doesn't have to be the parent/child dynamic for you. It could be your role in your job, your friendship group, your community, your family system. But the pattern is the same. Like, you were made to feel like being extraordinary, because that's what you are, being fucking Superwoman or Superman, was just the baseline. Within that, your identity wrapped itself around what you do for everyone else. You never truly got to discover who you are separate from being of service. And now you are in this Ace of Swords moment of rediscovery that's really exciting, because you're cutting through those expectations and you're going like, hang on, I'm a whole human being. Like, I also deserve a time for contemplation of who I am. I also deserve softness and pleasure and care and respect, like a life that isn't just essentially my job description, like what I do for other people, what I bring to the table. The passion card, you know, from the Modern Witch spiritual deck, this just backs up the message so beautifully, to be quite honest. This image, it's this bright flower on that orange background, flower with an open eye in the center, and that's your inner self. It's your passion, it's your creativity, your schmexuality, intuition, your weirdness, watching from deep inside. Like, are we allowed out now? You're recognizing that parts of you were never actually lost. They were just buried under thick layers of responsibility and obligation. And now you're starting to cut through the noise and remember what you actually like. You're deepening the connection with yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally. This honestly feels like huge glow up energy, Power 5, not just aesthetically, although honestly it can be that. It's also learning not to feel guilty for enjoying time alone, for having hobbies that aren't just about being productive, for spending money on yourself, for cultivating your appearance because you like how it feels, for sitting on the sofa all day and watching your favourite show just because, for having an identity that is not purely defined by how much you can provide. You are realising this is allowed. You're allowed to be more than the emotionless administrator of everyone else's life. It's about coming home to yourself, Power 5, and the passion card, it says, like, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to have passion, and it's okay to want to nurture it. Feeling anger isn't you demonstrating emotion in a bad way. It's often the signal that something hasn't felt fair, or that you've been taking on too much, or your boundaries were crossed. You're learning to treat that not as a flaw, but just as valuable information. And then that Hierophant reverse with the King of Wands energy. And this is where you become a bit of a revolutionary in your own life. You know, the Hierophant reversed is looking at the old systems, whether it's family rules or cultural expectations, religious conditioning, workplace hierarchies, whatever the case may be. This is how it's always been thing that you grew up inside, and saying, okay, cool, but also, no. That's what I'm getting. You're breaking out of that. You're dismantling old patterns, freeing yourself from traditions that don't actually support your growth. This is about progress over tradition. You're rejecting that inner critical voice that told you it had to be this way, that you had to be the one who never complains, never drops the ball, never needs anything. The King of Wands is you stepping into a completely different kind of leadership. This is you doing things your own way, on your own terms, on your own path. You're discovering who you are when you're not doing everything out of obligation, and you're no longer afraid to take up space. You're unapologetic about doing that. You're becoming confident in your choices, even when people around you don't fully get the new you yet. And this can look like really practical stuff. It doesn't always have to be big stuff. This could be, someone who has always depended on you might feel entitled to your time, your energy, your resources, your generosity, your love. They might say like, oh, come into work early, I need you. Or, cancel your doctor's appointment and help me with this instead. Or, you'll deal with it, right? You always do. And instead of automatically saying yes and contorting your entire life around their needs, this new King of Wands version of you goes, do you know what? No, I've got other things to do today. I'm actually going to do something different. And if they panic and they say, well, what's going to happen to me? What am I going to do? You're learning to calmly say, that's not my problem. You'll have to figure that one out. Not because you stop caring, but because you finally realize your worth is not measured in how overextended you are. I keep hearing the phrase specifically, decriminalizing saying no. That's genuinely what you're doing. You are taking no out of that category of being seen as selfish or evil or ungrateful and putting it into healthy, necessary adult word that it is. You're recognizing that being king doesn't mean that you're responsible for wiping every villager's ass. Yes, there is an overarching sense of responsibility in your nature, and that's beautiful, and it's part of your gift, wanting to help, but the king cannot be everywhere at once. The king cannot personally manage every tiny thing in the kingdom and still remain sane. The king is the empire, and in this reading, your empire is you. It's looking after everything, your mind, your body, your spirit, your life. You are finally investing back into that. And as you do that, you're stepping into your upright Empress energy. Even though she showed up in reverse when we looked at your wound, you are starting to feel safer in your physical body again. Maybe you're getting in touch with your cyclical nature, your ebbs and flows, your natural rhythms, knowing that it's okay not to do it all, knowing that rest is allowed, retreat is allowed, receiving is allowed. It is safe to love, safe to nurture your passions, safe to have days where your energy isn't at 110%, and you are not the emergency hotline for every single person you know. You're learning that real partnership, whether it's with friends or lovers or colleagues or kids or community, it's about mutual trust and vulnerability. You don't have to act like things don't bother you. You don't have to pretend like it's not that deep when it very much is that deep. You don't have to bear the brunt of everything in silence. You can sit down with your child and say, this is why I'm scared. This is what I went through. I don't want to repeat that. You can sit down with your partner and say, I need this from you. I need more communication, or I need more help with the finances or the house or the emotional labor. And you know that you're not asking too much. You're asking for basic reciprocity. It's the same with work. You can say, no, you know what? I can't stay late. No, I can't cover that again. I have a life too, and that life matters. And I want to do it my way. And the people who were relying on you never saying that, they might get irritated, they might push back, they might try to guilt trip you. But that's where your new king archetype comes in, the healthy version, not the tyrant. You're stepping into real inner sovereignty now, not just the emperor in survival mode, but the king in his grown, grounded, benevolent power. You lead from compassion, not fear, but that compassion has to start with you. You make decisions that support you, not drain you. You create structure without being rigid. You can take up space without dominating everyone else. You become the calm center of your own life instead of the frantic fixer in everyone else's trying to control every outcome. So the core truth of this pile, it's this, your insecurities told you I'm only valuable when I'm strong, when I'm managing everything, when I'm doing it all alone without complaint. And if I stop, everything falls apart and it'll be all my fault. But the truth of the matter is, you are valuable because you are finally learning to stop carrying what was never yours. You are valuable when you rest. You're valuable when you say no. You are valuable when you choose your health over someone else's convenience. You are valuable when you let yourself be held. You're valuable when you follow your passions. You are valuable simply because you exist, not because you're constantly in service. You were never meant to be the emperor of a collapsing tower forever. You are meant to be the king of your own life. Passionate and sovereign and creative, supportive, loved and free. And that pile 5 is why you're amazing, not just because you survived, but because you're finally safe enough to start living this time. So that is what I'm getting for your reading, pile 5, and that is where I'm going to leave you today, my loves. I just want to say thank you so much for being here, thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing your beautiful energy with me. I really do appreciate it more than you know. If you enjoyed this reading, if a tiny little bit of it resonated and you want to support the channel, the best ways to do that are super simple. You can like the video, you can comment, you can hype, share and sub. All of that genuinely helps a small creator like me more than you realise. I know some of these topics today have been a little bit heavy, and if you're shy about saying what resonated, even just something like dropping an emoji or telling me which pal you picked makes a huge difference in terms of getting the algorithm to push my video out there. So if you are on the fence but you feel like you're able to say something, I would be really grateful. And of course, as always, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I adore you, Pal 5. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.